to the Chairman of the Board of Directors of AFRINIC, Mr. Subramanian Monesamy. Thank you.
Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's my pleasure on behalf of AFRINIC to welcome you all to the 34th AFRINIC Public Policy Meeting being held online. This is our second and last meeting of 2021, and it is also the third time an AFRINIC meeting is taking place online in the era of the current pandemic. As the regional Internet Registry for Africa, AFRINIC wishes to see a service region using the Internet to improve communication. In pursuing this vision, we are constantly looking for stakeholders such as governments, ISPs, educational institutions, as well as other players, so as to forge partnerships. Our public policy meeting is a vital avenue for consistent engagement with our members, the community, and other stakeholders. This week, there will be presentations as well as discussions on policies and topical issues. Most importantly, this meeting encourages multi-stakeholder participation in our decision-making process to ensure an equitable distribution of Internet number resources in Africa. It is essential to bring together experts in the field of Internet technology so that we can realize together the potential of the Internet. I would like to thank you for joining us and sharing your valuable experience and ideas. I would also like to thank our meeting sponsors, who are Meta, MTL Business, Africa, Team Simru, and DNS Africa for the most valuable support. In closing, I hope that all of you will enjoy the conference, and I wish you all a very pleasant meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to Eddie Kayura, who will be the moderator of the roundtable for decision makers. You have the floor.
Mr. Subramanian Monesamy, that we generally call SM, the chairman of our board. And thank you all for joining us today. I'd like to invite the panelists to switch on their cameras as I do the introduction. Today we have an interesting discussion around the building the digital economy. Can you please mute your microphones? You only open it when you are speaking. And it's my great pleasure to welcome three eminent senior of our industry today, been generous with their time and ready to share a lot of experience with us. I'd like to take a short moment and introduce each one of them. When I read the bio, it's at this level of their career, we may spend the entire panel if I just go through all that they've done. But I just want to thank you, Mr. Andile, and I'm sure what is there is very short. So Mr. Andile Nkaba is the founder and executive chairman of Convergence Partner Investment. He established Convergence Partners in 2006 as an impact investment holding and private equity firm focusing on technology around the African continent. Andile is also highly passionate about philanthropy, where he works on several projects through his family foundation, the Solcon Foundation. He has a lot of other hats, I can say, that I hope he will have some time to share with us. And allow me to welcome with us Mr. Andile, and thank you for your time. I had to I thought that I'll start first with age, then go with the ladies first. I want to welcome Funke Opeke, who's the founder and CEO of Main1. Main1 is a digital infrastructure service provider that built West Africa's first open access connecting with extension Abidjan in deal in data centers. And there's a particular point with okay, is I dream that she will be able to the young women in our field to see that yes, we can go to the top and lead successful business. Funke, thank you very much and welcome with us. Last but not least is Kabir Ruhi. Kabir Ruhi gathers 20 years of experience in business leadership, technology transformation, management consulting, and financial services. Prior to joining the Rogers Group, senior position Capgemini, Telecom Media and Entertainment, Central and Southern Europe in Paris, and DCDM Consulting Company managed by Accenture in Mauritius. Kabir holds a first degree mathematics and is also our very respected service provider. We receive a lot of services from Rogers Capital in Mauritius. And there's something that I didn't know that I realized at the bottom of his profile, that he's a member of the Young Presidents Organization, YPO, and he is the Honorary Consul of the Republic of Lithuania in Mauritius. So welcome with us, should I say, Kabir. Yeah, welcome and thank you so much for being reachable, for being available to us and for supporting the development of the internet. So today we want to discuss about building the digital economy. Back in the days when internet was starting, I believe that people didn't know the impact or the potential that it had. It was small, we would do just a bit of email on, but today and even pandemic and even this session, no one thought that internet will have this success. And as it's growing, we even see an economy that is being built around the digital. And today, I'd like to hear from you, different perspective. We'd like to hear your advice on different angles. So without further ado, I'd like to start by Andile. Can you please tell us more about the digital economy and what you and your company have been doing so far to contribute to it? Welcome, Andile.
Thank you very much, Eddie. Thank you to all the panelists, and again, congratulations to you as the CEO of AFRINIC for putting this together, you and your team. I think it's an event happening in an environment where we have started to learn the importance of our industry in a way that we never understood before. Again, I'm honored to share a platform here with Funke, who is both my colleague and friend, and Kabir, who really is one of the leading experts in our industry. The way in which I would kickstart this is that I think COVID-19 made us to understand our industry in a very different way than we understood before. I think we understood as an industry that really drives the economy, but I think we now have clearly understood in the moments of crisis, in the moments of pandemics, in the moments of even environmental calamities, we need this industry to be able to create that connection between us as humans. And I think they always say that if you want to better understand something, try and understand it during crisis. I think we have seen that the digital economy, digital technologies are really central to build the future resilience of society, not only for the livelihood of people, but to be able to prepare society for any future challenges. And therefore, for me, digital economy is not really a choice or an opportunity, but it is a way for human race to survive in this planet. It is a way for us to protect, the environment. I'm sure we all saw the discussions that were happening in COP26 rather. I think it's becoming very clear that to move to clean energy, to move to an environment where the world can be able to protect this planet, there is no other route than digital technologies. In the way we manage energy, in the way we prepare for the future, both from a defense, if you want, or protection of the world or our planet from environmental issues or pandemics or any other issue. I think just before I take a step down is to say that it's digital society more than just digital economy that the role of this industry has to play. And I think we have seen this in the last 2 years, and we need to prepare resilient infrastructure for the future. Now, I wrote a short piece for the future of 2041, which I will share with you a bit later, but those would be my remarks. It's digital society to protect the future of our environment and build a resilient economy and make sure that future generations, young people, can be able to live a better life. That's really what our role is. Thank you.
I got feedback from, thank you so much, Andile. I got a feedback from the interpreters that there was a bit of challenge with my connection, so allow me to just stay a bit in audio. Can you hear me? And it's an important fact, as you say, it's a digital society. It's not just the economy, because even leisure is happening now online. We have seen meetings where we have social evenings online, and yes, a lot of things is happening. And you also touch on something that is very key at this point, was on the sustainability of the planet. These are things that sometimes we think items or topics for other people, and yet we all contribute to what is happening on this planet, and it's very important that we play our part. Funke, could you also tell us more about your perspective on the digital economy or the digital society, as Andile just said, and what you have been already doing so far in Nigeria, and I know you've also played different roles in other places of the world. Tell us more a bit about you and your company.
Thank you, Eddie, and good morning. And good morning, Andile and Kabir, and all the participants on this panel. And really thanks to AFRINIC for putting this together. I absolutely agree with Andile, and I think that is so apt, as the times have shown us that indeed it is not just a digital economy. And in Nigeria, where I'm based, we used to talk about an oil and gas economy, but a digital society. And COVID has clearly demonstrated that to function effectively in the world today, you need digital, be that for entertainment, for delivery of government services, for education, for commerce, for any kind of activity that impacts the human existence. Digital is playing a very active role, even in helping us manage the environment better, dissemination of knowledge, avoidance of travel with new technology. We need to ensure we're not displacing those forms of energy consumption with new ones that are just as impactful on the environment. But really, we live in a new digital society, and as service providers and investors on the continent, I think that's a perspective that this panel brings. For us in Main One, it's been 12 years of being focused on deploying infrastructure, digital infrastructure in West Africa. I mean, we look back and we see how far we've come. We started with a submarine cable connecting West Africa through Europe to the rest of the world, and then started building terrestrial fiber and investment in data center to bring content closer to the citizens in the region, and also to enable businesses deploy their services online on a 24/7 basis. I think while considerable progress has been made, and when you look at broadband penetration across our region, of course, the internet being the underlying, one of the key building blocks of that, you see that it's gone from probably about 10, 11% when we started to close to 40% today. But how do you have a society where only 40% are able to participate, and where the quality and the quantity of access enjoyed by half of that 40% is not such that they can depend on it consistently for their daily enhancement of their quality of life or their work or commerce, either because of affordability issues or quality issues. And so for us at Main One, the focus remains building on the work we've been doing for the past 12 years, because COVID has shown us that the work is not nearly done. We realized that before, but it's certainly heightened the awareness and also accelerated the need to do more. So what we see is a need for continued investment, opportunities for continued investment in digital infrastructure to extend the reach, improve the quality, adopt newer, more efficient and effective technologies. And really, we are big advocates for smart infrastructure deployment and shared infrastructure. When we look at the affordability issues on the continent, the only way we're going to have that pervasive access and coverage and actually leapfrog to catch up with other parts of the world is by doing things smarter. And by doing that on the continent, hopefully we can bridge the gap, or the gulf actually, that currently exists in terms of access, internet access, usage of our populations, and more advanced economies for the betterment of the people on the continent, actually. So that is my view, and that remains a focus for our work, putting in more of that digital infrastructure, fiber networks, data centers, and extending and connecting that with internet exchanges and bringing content closer to the eyeballs. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Funke, for this insightful perspective on what you're doing in the West Africa part of the world. And I'm sure we'll discuss more when we discuss about usage and access and usage to the population. I also like the smart approach, which is not always easy, to have people who are competing share some infrastructure and move the competition on the service level instead of keeping the infrastructure as the only competitive advantage. Thank you for that perspective. So now I don't know how to address you, Kabir, if I should say Honorable Kabir or Ambassador Kabir, because when we met the first time, it was an easy discussion, and now you'll advise us also how to address you so that we don't commit a diplomatic issue. Rogers Capital has been in the market for long. You've been doing a lot, and I've had an opportunity to discuss with your team and hopefully soon be able to visit also your journey. Tell us more a bit what you've been contributing in the Mauritian ecosystem, and what have you been doing so far? Over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Eddie, and a very good day to all participants. And I mean, as I mentioned to you when we met last time, the easiest way is to call me Kabir. You know, um, that's for the short story. Um, in fact, I would say before COVID, we knew already that software was running the world. And ever since the advent of COVID, uh, we all know that software is actually ruling the world. And as far as we are concerned, we want to participate in that. And uh, the Rogers Group, which I serve for now for more than 15 years now, is rather heavily invested in technology and heavily invests into technology. We are one of the most experienced systems integration player on the island. We've been in existence for more than 30 years. We have a rather dominant market share in Mauritius and the region. And some 5 to 7 years back before, um, I think we understood the conundrum of convergence between hardware, software, and connectivity. And we restructured around 4 key offerings that are cloud and data center, digital and data, cybersecurity, and managed connectivity. Today, we are, you know, amongst the largest players in this region of the world in both fields, and we operate a hybrid connectivity network which consists of both wireless and fiber communication. In our midst, we count some of the most experienced and certified professionals in Africa, whether it is on ERP, analytics, security. We operate 3 data centers. We host the Mauritius Internet Exchange Point, and we are a large B2B provider of connectivity services on the island. And we really want to further extend our footprint in Mauritius, obviously, which is our home nation, but also into Africa. So I think we are again at a crossroad. The more we get to know, the more we conclude that we really know very little, and I think that's the magical part of technology. And once again, partnering with some interesting African partners is the way we want to further, contribute into the digital economy. Over to you, Eddie. Sorry.
Yes, thank you so much, Kabir. And I assessed the fact that you are hosting the exchange point, the fact that some of your competitors allow you to do so. It is not the recommended model, but it is also allowed testimony of how much trust your peers in your network or in the environment are having you. And I commend you also for that. Back to you, Andile. When we spoke a bit about the investment and the different activities that you do in the different projects. What are the key priorities that you are looking at that you think would foster a healthy growth of the digital society on the continent? And I know you have a big heart towards investment, and please share more on that to our audience.
Thank you. I think, Eddie, let me maybe preface my input by a very short, quick background around where the state of the continent is, where we come from and where we are and where we are going, and how we invest in that environment. Firstly, the problem, I think, what Funke and Kabir said, I'm going to start by adding there to say we have a big problem in the sense that when you look at Africa's traffic, right, about 82% of Africa's traffic transits outside the continent, right? And then you only have about average 16% or 17% of intra-Africa traffic that's being routed within the continent. And now, if you look at any other continent, it's the inverse, i.e., 80% of Europe's traffic is intra-Europe, same as with Asia. Now, why is this the case? What if historically, if you look at our challenge, is that in the satellite era, the way in which colonial powers designed Africa's network was that all our traffic must be routed via our former colonial masters, if you want. Now, that pattern, in my opinion, has not been changed fundamentally, basically. It still exists, if you want. It was in the satellite era, and then it continued. Yes, there are attempts to change this. What do we need to do to change it? We need internet exchange points, we need data centers, we need edge, we need all this infrastructure, basically. Because for any traffic that's transiting outside the continent, it costs us money. We pay for that. Even if that traffic will find itself back into the continent. Say, I'm sending something to Funke in Lagos or to Kabir in Mauritius. Does that go directly? So I think that's, in my view, one of the issues we're trying to solve in our investment thesis, our investment philosophy, by building infrastructure to make sure that Africa's traffic is routed within the continent. This is, to us, the foundation to build that future for the generations of 2030, of 2040, is to make sure that Africa's digital infrastructure, right, is able to provide connectivity, right, for the enhancement of the African continent. Now, it's even more important now, given what we see happening in the world. If you take projects such as GIX in Europe, if you take the laws that are being passed in Europe, such as Digital Services Act, Digital Markets Act, and also if you see what is generally happening in as far as the internet is concerned. As Africa, we must continue to argue for one internet in the world and create and make sure that we can convince powers that be that, you know, let's invest in building the internet in different parts of the world and in particular in Africa, rather than to break the internet up for purposes of maybe geopolitics or something like that. So for us, Eddie, it's about building that foundation this foundation is in submarine cables, it's in data centers, it's in edge data centers, it is in application layer, it is in the softwares, SDN, NFV, SD-WAN, and using open source. That is what we do. I mean, if you look at all the companies we've invested in, it is to address, you know, this basic philosophy of intra-Africa traffic. So we see this by creating 3 or 4 rings around the continent: Southern Ring, Eastern Ring, Western Ring, and Northern Ring. And these rings basically will be optic fiber rings connected to data centers in each of these regions, and making sure that the traffic of Africa, whether it's education traffic, health, government traffic, you know, intra-Africa traffic, must almost. This would save us a lot of money, both as ordinary citizens, as stakeholders, as the industry, basically, if we can address this problem. So that is what really, I mean, our investment philosophy is, by building this intra-Africa traffic and in the way we create that digital society, that digital economy. Thanks.
There's a comment about some technical issues on sound. It will be fixed as it goes. So Funke, I like what Andile just said, and I know you're already doing that in the Western African region. Tell us some of the challenges that you've been facing, or other, what can you add on this approach of creating local content, having more traffic staying. And I believe that in that part of the world, there's a big population, so there's also big usage that is there. How successful have you been at doing what Andile is already sharing? And I also would like to encourage people who have questions, please keep them, just add them on the Q&A lists. We'll come to them. We have planned to have at least 30 minutes to have the session with your question. Over to you, Funke.
Okay, no, thanks, Eddie. Yes, indeed, Andile gave comprehensive treatment to the work that needs to go on to ensure that, you know, Africa is effectively participating and our citizens are getting the right value from technology investments to participate on a peer-to-peer level on a global basis. Now, in terms of that infrastructure deployment, and one of the things we realized shortly after we deployed the submarine cable is the challenges to connect our neighborhoods, our cities, with quality infrastructure, sometimes even exceed what it takes to connect countries with those rings around the continent. And to be honest, our work for the past 12 years, since we actually deployed the cable, 11 years since we went into service, has been focused more on that because there's just so much work to do within the region to ensure regional integration. We added Côte d'Ivoire and Senegal to our network in 2019, working in partnership with the Orange Group. And that was really, I think, a sign of progress. One, in terms of infrastructure sharing. So they decided to work with us so we could leverage existing infrastructure we had on the coastlines to connect those countries into an existing network, thereby increasing utilization and reach. Also brought them into markets of Ghana and Nigeria, where they have now established transport hubs so that their traffic is not all flowing out to Europe before it comes back to reach other African countries. And so we are seeing steps in that direction. But I think as those of us who live on the continent know, there's still a lot more work to be done. data centers on the continent, and we also operate 3 data centers, one in Nigeria, one in Ghana, and another one in Cote d'Ivoire, are also enabling more content be hosted on the continent, be that locally generated content or global or international content that is targeted to African eyeballs. But the numbers are still not enough. Not enough of our networks are pairing in our exchanges. Not enough of our content is being hosted locally. Now, why is that? The incentive structures, I think, remain a real challenge for the deployment of infrastructure on the continent. You find the permitting regimes, the requirements to get the right of way, the frameworks, both commercial and regulatory, that exist for infrastructure sharing are just not as mature. And so the cost of infrastructure deployment is high if you're doing it on a proprietary basis and you're not able to share that. In markets where usage doesn't really match what you have in the rest of the world, and I say the technology costs the same. So if everyone is building parallel networks in a region where the spending capacity, the affordability is low and the utilization is not as par as the rest of the world, you can imagine that we're already at a disadvantage. So I think that's one of the bigger challenges, is really how you make the economic models work, how you make the investment model work so that you can deploy this same world-class technology in a region where affordability is not quite the same as you have in advanced markets. And also how you focus the attention on closing the gaps and deepening access rather than just building additional proprietary infrastructure that, of course, secures perhaps your place in chasing the same high net worth market, but really doesn't address delivering services to a broader spectrum of our population. And I'm not sure that our regulators, national governments have that focus of enablement. Of course, most of our countries have deregulated and have policies in place, but do they truly recognize these challenges to the investment model in deploying world-class technology in our region and work with the industry in a way that accelerates that? I'm not sure. So I think if you think of challenges, that really is. I think we've been able to build out skill and competencies. Kabir talked about that. I think we have world-class talent. We're exporting talents. I have no doubt in terms of the African capacity to master these technologies. It's really having the enabling environment to do more within our national boundaries and on a regional basis to get us better connected, get us sharing data more, get us using regional hubs rather than all looking to Europe or other continents to ensure what is becoming our daily existence. It's not just a question of accessing leisure information or having a choice. It is that you are unable to do certain daily functions if you don't have that access. And so it's become more critical for all of us really to work together to figure out how we accelerate progress with digital infrastructure. Thank you.
Keep few words of what you said. It was packed of wisdom and experience that you've done. I see that partnership came in strongly, and I saw that when you managed to have a handshake with Orange, it almost opened up a new horizon for you. And your deep emphasis on the infrastructure sharing and the incentivize. You touched on a question that I wanted to go to Kabir, and I'll come back to all of you with the last round, which is a bit personal. I would like you to share a bit because we have an opportunity to have experienced and eminent members of our communities today with us, and we also have young people who are just starting their careers. We had the newcomer session on Friday. So Kabir, if you have something to add on what you believe government and regulators can better do to support private sector in these efforts, please share your perspective on that. But as well, tell us about what advice can you give to younger sisters and brothers? What worked best for you? What did not work so well? And this question is also going to come back to all of you. I'll do a turn in the reverse now. After Kabir, we'll hear from Funke and then Andile. I don't know if we have enough time for Andile, but let's hear from you, Kabir.
Thanks, Eddie. So that's two questions, right?
Yes.
Well, in terms of government and the regulatory part, I would say that the digital economy has, in my opinion, three key ingredients, right? Number one is around skills and competencies, and government should promote those skills that, foster creativity and innovation, i.e. those are skills that revolve around STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths. And I think secondly, it should aim at excellence in education. And I don't think we should be shy in partnering with the very best institutions at international level. Singapore has done it, Dubai has done it. Thank God Rwanda has also done it through Carnegie Mellon University. And Mauritius also does it to some extent. After all, the African market is mostly an untapped market representing 17% of the world population, out of which 45% is already urbanized. So who would not be interested in that? Number two, and this has been widely shared with my fellow panelists, number two is around connectivity. And if you look at it from an economic standpoint alone, if you look at the economic multiplier effect as regards to the provision of cheap, fast, reliable, and redundant connectivity, you would be amazed at the direct, indirect spillover and catalytic impacts of providing such a connectivity for a country. So governments should therefore fast-track connectivity across the continent. And obviously, from a regulatory point of view, we need to come to terms with the assessment of short-term gains in terms of protectionism vis-à-vis the long-term ones of an open market. And here I am referring to local loop unbundling, which in Africa has been way too delayed as compared to the situation in mature economies. And I think thirdly, in terms of those three ingredients, we need to have the creation of an ecosystem which is conducive to entrepreneurship, innovation, and creativity. Of course, we do have our own successful African technopreneurs, but those are only a handful. And we Africans are no less clever than Europeans, Asians, or Americans. So I think governments should be in a position to put some funds aside, call it the way you want, i.e., venture capital fund or sovereign value creation fund or technopreneurship fund, which should go towards value creation from African technopreneurs. We have buzzing fintech communities to some extent in Nairobi, in Lagos, and probably in other regions of Africa. So, this is what we should leverage on. So I think, as to your first question, Eddie, this is those are my thoughts in a nutshell. And if I had to maybe summarize the answer to this question, I would say to governments and public policy decision makers, basically, give us the tools, and we will finish the job. That would be my short answer to your first question. The second question is a bit tricky, and I have to tell you, Eddie, at the very outset that it is critically important for me to tell you that I do not consider myself as a role model. Very far from that. I have had the opportunity to be raised in a family that could afford paying for my tertiary education. For the rest, I think I made my way through some hard work, I would say ruthless and unflinching learning, and probably a little bit of luck as well. If I have to be brief about it, I would certainly relate to what Steve Jobs said during one of his speeches that he delivered at Stanford University, maybe with a little twist on my side. So the advice would basically be extremely curious, be very hungry, and most probably be a little bit foolish as well. If you can travel the world, open yourselves to different cultures, don't be shy, you are far from being stupid, develop your own critical mind of the world, exchange thoughts and ideas, and see the beauty in simple things. Nelson Mandela, who is one of the most inspiring leaders I respect the most, said once, I never lose. I either win or I learn. I think he said it all. So over to you, Eddie.
You also embody the humility. You don't want us to get you as a role model, but I'm sorry, we'll keep you as a role model. You're even an ambassador. Who doesn't want me to call him ambassador? So thank you so much for this. And I'd like to go to Funke. Funke, we have women, and we have activities that we do to even attract to encourage women to come and be participants in our sessions and all the activities we do. But I have to admit, we are not yet very successful. Maybe as you share that, can you please also give us some advice on what we can do best to welcome or encourage more women like you and lead even the transformation of the continent? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Eddie. I think participation is probably one of the first steps. And so thank you for having me. It's good to see that panels that include women and public events that include women in leadership roles certainly sends a message to younger women that they can attain such if those are their aspirations. But Kabir did mention something that I think is critical in terms of getting more women into the digital, empowering or enabling the digital society, be that pursuing careers in engineering or as part of the digital economy, and that is STEM. So ensuring our young women have access to quality STEM education, I think, is really critical across the continent, and ensuring the quality of education. And to be honest, that's something that's to some extent gender indifferent in ensuring the quality of education. The challenge, of course, in other parts, especially in rural parts of the continent, is ensuring that young women remain in school to get the education when the education exists. But for those who have kind of started down that journey and are able to gain access, the encouragement I would give is to stay focused. I mean, the world today, I would say, is much flatter, if I would quote Tom Friedman, in access to information and knowledge. And because we have this powerful tool called the internet, young people are able to pursue their passions, pursue their knowledge, and have access to world-class and state-of-the-art learning, just like people in advanced economies, some who might be paying a lot more to access the same information. So I would say, in some sense, the information or access to knowledge barrier is considerably lowered, and our young women should take advantage of that. We're just as brilliant. We have the capability, access to opportunity, access to knowledge, access to know-how and information have been the barriers. Of course, there are other barriers we discussed in terms of having the right environment to do that work. But if you prepare yourself and remain focused, then those opportunities will indeed open up, or you will create those opportunities for yourself. So I just want to encourage women, when we look at the size of the digital economy within the global economy today, certainly it represents a lot of opportunity to add value to oneself and one's society. And I certainly hope that young women, by getting exposure to STEM education and by seeing the career opportunities that exist, will participate more. And I'm a big advocate of that. Obviously, I pursued engineering and have stayed the course of working in the industry to the point where I founded and lead Main One, and I hope other people feel that's a journey that is available to them as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Funke. I'd like to also tell the young men or gentlemen in the room, those advice are the same for us. So don't think that it is only for women. We can also stay focused and seize opportunity or even create them. Wonderful. So last but not least on this last round, before we go to the questions on the floor, we already have few questions that are there. So if you can check, Kabir and Funke, maybe you can see those that you'd like to. There's one specific for you, Funke. You can prepare for those questions. So Andile, over to you.
Thank you. I think my input on this would be just to share an experience. We have, as a family, early child development school, which that school is now just around 22 years. And we have about just under 100 kids at any time in the school. One of the things I would say, I mean, which really is the foundation for human development is early child development. That first 5 years is what will determine you in the next 60 or 70 years of your life. I would say to young people here who are either going to start to have families and children, when we were young, we were taught how to read and write, what would your child learn today? There are new tools that are used in early child development. Make sure these are more understanding of robotics, understanding of computation at that age, understanding, for instance, technology, and the way in which a child can learn how to build things. Both the pedagogy and epistemology of learning in the first 5 or 6 years of human life has advanced significantly. Our industry has played a critical role in that. So if really you are 20 today and you intend in the next few years to build and have a family, make sure the type of education you give your children is something that when they are teens or when they are, for instance, getting to be youth, they must have a good foundation of knowledge. The knowledge that will be required in 2040 and beyond. Without that, we cannot compete. This is applicable to young teens, young adults. The knowledge, design, and architecture of the digital environment has fundamentally changed. We cannot teach young people from early child development to preschool, to middle school, to high school, to university, what was taught to our parents in the 19th and the 20th century, and expect that our kids or grandchildren will compete. So that is one first very important intervention. The second one, as I conclude, Eddie, is that if you are young today and you have in your vocabulary looking for a job, you must know that you have no future. Looking for a job in going to 2030 and 2040, there will not be jobs in the way we know them. You need to learn and be able to build something that is yours. I think Kabir and Funke said this, that it is the era of an entrepreneurial. It cannot be that if you are going to look for a job, you won't find any. It doesn't matter what level of education you have. Try and take that education in building your own business, your own enterprise. It doesn't matter how small it is, even if it's in your bedroom at home with a single computer, right? That's where it starts. It's about you generating your own ideas and building those ideas to make sure that you can build your own future. 2040 is going to be different to what you see today. So I would say the way in which the future of our planet in the next 20 years, in 2041, will be very different to what it is today. And if you are 20 years today, and you will be 40 years sometime in the next, by 2040, you must think deep and not really expect that you will be looking for a job. You will have no future. The future is about you being self-employed, being an entrepreneur, and building your own business. And your own children must learn technology at kindergarten. That is what you should do if you want to build the future for yourself.
Thank you all. I'll try again with my camera for some time. If it doesn't work, please let me know. But it was so deep. I thought you were going to talk to the people in the room, and then you went to talk to their children, to the grandchildren. So this has been so insightful, and I learned so many things. And I hope it's the same for our audience. Without further ado, I'd like to go on all the questions that we have. I hope we'll have enough time. There's one question from Haitham El Nakal from the regulator in Egypt. Haitham, I've also seen a question that may come back to you. So there's a question for government. So my question to Ms. Funke, thank for all the effort men want to develop and deploy the fiber infrastructure to facilitate the affordability. Will the increase of deploying fiber reduce the access prices for residential and customers at home? Is there an expectation for the reduction in rate?
No, thank you very much. Interesting question. Well, the trend is prices continue to go down, but I wish it took the efforts of private sector alone. I think there are a couple of things we see impacting access pricing. As Kabir mentioned, the issue of local loop unbundling, I think, remains a challenge for most of our economies. And what that means is we're not effectively sharing the cost of that last mile. And I think across the continent, the last mile still costs too much. And that's really what it is, because the costs are being passed on to those consumers who can afford it and afford the cost of proprietary rather than unbundled infrastructure. I think the other driver of cost, of course, is the absence, I would say, of public infrastructure. So pre-existing ducts in our roads, the high permit fees that have to be paid, and in some cases, as we're seeing in Nigeria, regulation that limits the ability of private companies to build and scale infrastructure. So I think it's really working around some of these challenges to deploy that infrastructure in the first instance. And then by the time it is deployed, the prices are high. They continue to come down, not fast enough, clearly not fast enough for our markets where we need to improve access and quality and affordability. But I don't think the private sector has a singular capacity to change that.
Question back to him, and but we may have to hear from him at some point. And yes, there are challenges. I liked when you mentioned at one point that technology has the same price everywhere, but when we don't use a smart way of investing, we end up having to pay for the same technology twice, which totally makes the affordability unachievable. One thing that I also saw in different networks is the lack of usage of electricity poles to deploy faster the fiber towards residential areas. And I really would like to encourage government and people who can influence government to ensure that this boundary is not that firm and allow people to use or reuse whatever is already available. There's another question from Mike Elkins. I don't know who would like to take this question, but it goes like, what about allowing Elon Musk Starlink service to operate in all African countries? He is an African born in Pretoria. That would greatly assist in connecting the unconnected people where the economics of installing fiber does not make sense. That could well help keep African IP traffic in or above the continent. Who wants to go for it? Yes, Kabir.
I mean, I could possibly take it, and I would basically concur with Mark, right? I think definitely, why not? To be a little bit poetic, I think there is that French author who said once that something like that. No army on earth is strong enough to block an idea whose idea has come, right? I mean, something to that effect. I mean, you won't be able to sort of block the progress of technology, right? If that is part of a solution, I think this is something that not only should be explored, but most probably fast-tracked, especially, and as Mark pointed out himself, Elon Musk is African, so let's try to make the most of it. I would also like to add something, which is, and this is one question which I came across in the Q&A box, basically pinpointing that storage costs, etc., are prohibitive. I think there's something we need to understand, and that might be a little bit political in what I say, right? You have the European Union, you have the United States of America. I mean, just examples. And I mean, those blocks have been created also to create scale, right? If we add up the population of Africa, we reach 1.3 billion people. That's, I think, 16 or 17% of the world population. If we have some governance institutions which look at the continent from a comprehensive manner, from a holistic point of view, right? I don't think it would be that difficult to mobilize resources to connect everyone or almost everyone. And once you get that, automatically you get economies of scale. I mean, you get scale first, you get economies of scale then, and all of a sudden those things become affordable. So I think, just to add on one question that you asked earlier, Eddie, it's probably about time that Africa comes together, right? Because it has strength, it has scale, it is an untapped market. And if we can lay our own fiber, if we can lay our own submarine cables, and if we introduce a little bit of competition and innovation into those things, then we will succeed, So, we have, I think, organizations like the African Union. We have organizations like, the FIs like ADB. We have trade zones, preferential trade zones like COMESA, SADC, SADC, and so on and so forth. I think those are the things that we should push to them, I honestly and sincerely believe that those things, I mean, if brought together, will do, will benefit, the whole continent.
I was just going to say that I am aware, I believe that, yes, indeed, the new low Earth orbit satellites, Starlink, OneWeb, will provide benefit in connecting rural areas, providing direct access and also mobile backhaul on the continent. And we should all seek to take advantage of that. And I'm aware that indeed those companies are making moves to deploy services on the continent. But there are regulatory processes, and as we all know, our regulatory processes on the continent are not always the swiftest in enabling such access. I would just hope that over the upcoming period, as more of those satellites are deployed, that the services are indeed enabled and we can enjoy the benefits in more parts of the continent, especially hard to reach areas. Thank you.
Ease of regulation and ensure that new technologies are quickly available to the market. The next question comes from Mr. Ashok Hadakison, and it goes like, how far has the concept of essential services been recognized and used as a way to ensure infrastructure sharing and ensure accessibility? I think we may need to go through the different markets. We have South Africa represented here, Nigeria, West Africa, and Mauritius. Or even, I know you are aware of what is happening in different places as you are observing for new opportunities. The floor is open. Whoever wants to take the question goes first.
This one, thanks. Can you hear me, Eddie? Good. I think the issue of infrastructure is extremely very important. I mean, I'll just focus more on fiber for now. There's fiber in the ocean, and that fiber in the ocean, you then have long distance fiber between cities and between countries, and you also have metro and access. Some countries, you have city governments and mayors or local authorities or municipalities being responsible for roads and digging alongside the road or putting poles to put infrastructure. In some countries, we have experienced what is called a shared infrastructure model by some of the cities and municipalities. I think, I don't know, maybe I'll hear from Funke, we have what I call dual regulatory system in our industry now, where we are regulated by the telecoms regulators at one level, and then we more and more are regulated by state and local authorities, i.e. city governments or provincial or state governments, if you want to build infrastructure in a province or state level, depending on the political system in the country. I think I would say we really need, our engagement historically has been with the telecoms regulators. And now that we are moving where we have to interface more with local authorities alongside water, alongside electricity, and alongside other infrastructure in a city because of Internet of Things and all the things we have to do. And these local authorities are not well equipped to even hear or listen to our story, let alone for them to have regulations ready for us to be building fiber and Internet of Things and all these wireless access that's supposed to create this highly connected, hyper-connected environment. Because to use, as you have said earlier, to use an electricity pole in a city, or to use a sewage system in a city, or to use water system in a city, you need to talk to local municipalities. And they don't actually understand the the model of how best we can be regulated. There is a body of, smart cities in Africa. I would really encourage organizations such as AFRINIC to help us engage with such bodies in order for us to at least have a hearing at a strategic level with these either mayors of cities or, for instance, at state level or province level. I think the bottleneck, in my experience, in a number of countries where we build fiber, is now no more with the regulator rather, but with these new authorities that we need to talk to get permits to build or to get some rights or right of way for us to build. It is becoming a big challenge. So the education being done by the likes of the ITUs and in terms of AFRINICs and various other internet society, I think focus must be now towards local government, local authorities, municipalities, depending what you define them in a specific country. Because if these institutions are not familiar with this industry, they can slow down that digital economy and digital society. So that's really, for me, and you can only educate them for them to be able to understand our industry. And when we ask for, access to street servitudes, street poles, building fiber alongside the road, you don't end up in a country that has more than 100 cities where each town you have to go to, it's a different model of building optic fiber in that city. It is becoming a big problem for us because, there's no standard for them to regulate us or give us permits. So we need, as an industry, to educate, this community so that we can actually be better regulated. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andile, on this point. And we take the challenge as AFRINIC. We'll use all that we can. There's one good element is we are not seen. So our voice can be observed as a voice and not someone with a specific interest. In my country, when we are doing fiber optics, I also faced the same challenge. And the only thing that I saw working, even if it was not working perfectly, was have the telecom regulator becoming like the account manager or the facilitator, because when the authority, the regulator, there is a bit of suspicion between this local authority with the people that are in front of them. They always think that they're going to be taken advantage too. But when the context or the content, the need or the request comes from the regulator, the telecom regulator, it makes it simpler for them, and they also see that this is my counterpart or this is my cousin who's telling me this, so I need to make sure I foster this. But yes, this is very critical, and we'll put it on our table. It will take some time. I'm seeing Funke wanting to contribute, or no? We go on the next one.
No, absolutely agree with Andile with respect to dual regulation and the role of local municipalities who view their role as to regulate and tax rather than look at companies trying to deploy digital infrastructure as enablers of smart cities. And when you think of what our cities need to be in the future, IoT, autonomous vehicles, just really the whole concept of smart cities, then I think there is work to be done. And as Andile spoke, I thought perhaps even AFRINIC championing a focus area or study area in the future of African cities, I think would be a good opportunity. And of course, it also gets into things like the role of AFRINIC in enabling that as well, when you think of the number of locations and institutions that need to be connected. You know, there are a few spots of light that we have. We've done some work in one of our states here, Edo State, where the state government really was just open enough, rather than imposing additional regulations, to adopt or comply with the national regulations in terms of deploying fiber. And we've been able to deploy shared infrastructure. As we speak, we have 2 of the mobile operators, several last mile services deployed. We also have the state government providing connecting security cameras, technology hubs, schools, the state government, and really enabling increased digitization in Edo State based on that openness to enabling us work within the national or the telecoms regulatory framework without imposing additional conditions of their own. So I couldn't agree with what you said more, that local municipalities need to start seeing this as enablers, because I think at the end of the day, the state has benefited tremendously from the partnership that we had, more so than being at any kind of disadvantage.
Yeah. Kabir, you already touched on this question, the one with the how much we are losing in inadequate infrastructure, and also on the storage and the question and the economies and economy of scale. So if Daniel has been satisfied, maybe we can come up with another follow-up question. But we also have, before I give each of the panelists the final words, and I'm seeing time is almost up. Tabiso, who asked about contact. We dealt with LV electricity pole to deliver residential services, to deliver residential fiber services, and so my audio has a problem. Is it better now? Can you hear me better without the camera? Yes. So this is a contact question. If anyone has a contact for Tabiso, and I know some people in Rwanda and Uganda that have been dealing with the electric company, and we could put you in contact, as they are all part of our members of AFRINIC. So if the panelists also have done some contacts, I know Kabir also did some fiber. I don't know how much of it he did on poles. Anyone wants to share an insight? No?
I will get in touch with Tabiso to discuss into more details.
Okay, fine.
In fact,
So
we're already exchanging through the chat box.
all right, thank you. So now, may I then ask you for your final remark? We've gone into many directions, and it has been very, very enriching, at least for me. And I do believe that I'm not the only one who has been grown in this session here. Thank you so much for your time. Would you kindly give us your final remark, and we will do ladies first this time.
This panel and the discussions just highlights that we are indeed living in a digital society. COVID has shown us that, and that there is a lot of work yet to be done on the continent to bring our people fully into that digital society and close the gap that exists with the rest of the world. I think it also shows we need more sessions like this, because I think common challenges, knowledge sharing across the continent can only help us move forward, and also challenge bodies like AFRINIC that kind of cut across the entire continent in this digital space to do more to bring practitioners and thought leadership together so that we can, and regulators and policymakers, so that we can jointly accelerate the participation and benefits to our people by embracing the digital society. Thank you very much.
Any final comments? Kabir? Any final comment from you?
I didn't hear you properly. I think, well, I think Africa has an interesting story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
Given that, it's not been embroiled into legacy technologies and those things, can make us more agile. Funke mentioned the importance of education and having, a gender equality approach towards education, which is, of paramount importance. I think we should, all get together, and there is the need to drive some commonality in terms of our destiny. And once again, there's been a Roman Empire, there's been a British Empire. We probably, at some point in time, need to figure out how we come forward with an African empire, because the time will be ours at some point in time.
Thank you so much, Kabir. I was wondering when the political side of you will appear, and it has just popped up. We are going for the African empire. Thank you very much. And Andile, the last word is for you, and please, the floor is open.
Thank you. I would really like to thank you, Eddie, for inviting us, and thank also to my fellow panelists, really for that insightful, perspective, and also to participants in this event, AFRINIC-34. My short parting message is that we have to design our own future, and no one is going to do it for us as the continent. And I think we need to understand this every day, every month, every year, that we are on our own. And unless we, both this generation and the next future generation, must understand, if you live by hoping that somebody is going to do something for you, then I think you are in a wrong planet. So I would say that in order to prepare for future generations of Africa, the work must start today. And we need to know that all of us, as Kabir said, we are 1.3 billion. If the strength of all these people can really be put to use, I don't think we can be beaten by anything. It is in the mind that we really need, as Africans, to really think differently about the future of society, of our planet, of our environment, and in particular of the continent. So I've prepared a short note, Eddie. I will post it on my LinkedIn page this afternoon, talking to the future of 2041 about this event. So you will see it later this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Kabir. Thank you, Funke. Thank you, Andile. We lacked to get all the questions. There's one question that came last, but we are up on time. And I can only appreciate your time, your effort, and I've been so much inspired. And may you continue to progress and show us the way. Thank you. I'll give back the floor to Magali to tell you about the break. I think we have a break, but she has more detail about that. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you to all the panelists for your suggestions, for your experiences. We are going to have a 10-minute break and then we will start our second part and we are going to listen to technical presentations that are going to be really interesting. So we'll be back here in 10 minutes. Thank you. you are going to see the poll icon, and we would like to thank all our sponsors. MTEL Mauritius for connectivity, Meta, Africa, Kinvu. In the ISPN, we have DNS Africa. We also have our survey that is online. The link will be available in the chat box, and in this way, we can receive your feedback as for this AFRINIC-34 online meeting. And we want to improve, of course, our organization. And if you fill in the survey, you can also take part in a contest. And on Thursday, the 18th, the winner will be announced during the cocktail session. For the certification of the IPv6 training, you can enroll immediately and then take advantage of a 50% of discount. So thank you very much. The second part of this session, I would like to invite Arthur Kalemesen, who is going to be our moderator for the technical presentations we are going to listen to. Very interesting. We are hosting African and international experts. So thank you very much. Now it's time for the technical presentation.
Thank you. Hello. Hello.
Yes, we hear you, Arthur.
Yeah.
Yes, we hear you. Yes,
okay,
we hear you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
So you are, just to remind you, you are on the English channel?
Yes, I am in English channel.
Okay.
So thank you very much, Magali. And I'm wearing my headset because there are some civil work around me. So I hope that you can all hear me properly. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all again. So today we will be having an insightful technical session with regard to the high profile of our 7 speakers. So we expect each speaker to provide us with what I can say healthy food for our mind and hearts within these 20 minutes allocated to each of them, including a question and answer. So participants are invited to write their question in the chat windows so that at the end of each presentation, we can read this question, okay, to the presenter. So as said, I will we be glad to invite Mr. Stéphane Onloué to give his presentation on the mutually agreed norms for routing security, known as MARAS, initiative for network operators, coordination and validation with RPKI. It's important to know that Stéphane Onloué is the project manager and transformation lead at AFRINIC. So Stéphane, thank you for joining us. You have now the floor. Please bring to 20 minutes, including your presentation and question and answer. Thank you very much. You have the floor now, Stéphane.
Thank you very much. I hope I will be able to stay in that time range. Not easy though. So if you can load my slides. All right. So while he's loading the slides, so today we are going to look at an area of the internet which is very important to all of us. You know, internet has become a common good for all of us, and it is important. It is important that it stays up, scalable, available for everyone, everywhere around the world. This is why there is an effort from various internet organizations to make sure that the internet is safe, that it is secure. And we will be touching the security of the routing, not the entire internet, because you know internet is a set of multiple networks that are connected out there. So yeah, as author said, I am Stephen Musa, and I am project manager and transformation lead at AFRINIC. I also happen to be sharing a lot of presentations with regards to the Manners initiative with ISOC. So if the slides are not loading, can I share my screen?
Share your screen.
Share your screen. Okay. So next, please. All right, so the agenda today, we are going to look at what exactly is the problem that we are trying to solve. And we are going to share with you the solution that we are advocating for. So next slide, please. So I would like to thank a couple of people who help with their materials in getting these slides developed. That is Naveen Aftab, Philip Smith, Tashi, and Zober. Next, please. So what's the problem? Next. So I will start, next slide, please. I will start by talking about the BGP protocol. So it's often called the 203 napkin protocol because it was conceived by two engineers during an IETF meeting in 1989. They were sitting in a restaurant, and you remember, if you remember, there was the internet was routed on a protocol called Exterior Gateway Protocol, and the way the topology of the internet was it was like a route where we have like a core network and others are connecting like branches. Now, to help solve that problem, this protocol was therefore prototyped. As you're looking at the three napkins, you will see the first napkin is like the algorithm of the protocol, what exactly how it works. The second one is the list of messages that are exchanged by BGP peers. And the third one is like the time machine. Next, please. So from there, we all know how the internet operates, right? The internet is a set of connected networks. And these networks are identified by autonomous system numbers. These autonomous system numbers are usually there to, advertise what we call network reachability information. And this information that is being shared across the world is how we get all the autonomous systems connected. The protocol that is used for this is called BGP, Border Gateway Protocol. And I guess most of us here are familiar to, or if we are not very familiar, we've ever heard about BGP. So BGP is the protocol that ties the backbone of the internet. Next slide, please. Yeah. So as of date, this is like the number of prefixes. A prefix is like a network. These are the number of prefixes that are being advertised on the internet. 900,000 prefixes are being advertised. Next slide, please. And I just took also a snap from a route view from Uruguay University to show you. If you look at this graphic, you will see that 921,000. So I took this to show you that the number of routes that you see in the routing table depends on how you're peering, who is feeding your routing table. And you may see less and you may see more, depending on how you're peering, the type of contract you have with your upstreams and so on. Next, please. So these are the number of ASNs, that's autonomous system numbers, that are advertising prefixes out there. So till date, we have 772,000 unique ASNs that are originating prefixes on the internet. And we have 25,000 that are originating only one prefix. Next, please. So you can see all this data on the CIDR reports. So as I just presented the BGP is a protocol that is based on trust. So when the protocol was conceived, the engineers didn't think about the security part of it. So security was not embedded. So if I am a network engineer, maybe running a network of AFRINIC, and I want to peer, let's say, with an organization like MTEL, I meet the network engineer, we agree and we share our resources. I will tell them this is my prefix and this is my autonomous system number. They will do the same and we can peer. The problem with this way of operating is that the information, you need to verify it. So you can't just rely on trust. So thanks to this way of operating with BGP, let's see the consequences. Next slide, please. So if you look here, this is some data that was pulled out from the BGP stream with an API, and we tried to give this graph. These are the number of incidents that happened in 2020 and 2019. As you can see here, there is a lot of them that are happening. There are a lot of them that are happening. And this is why we want to discuss this, and we will not get tired discussing this until all of us we understand the importance of securing the global routing table, which is a common good for all of us. Next, please. So if you go on the Manners Initiative Observatory webpage, you will see this information also. Like as of November 2021, we have globally 295 incidents that occurred, and the culprits, we have 756 initiator of those incidents. You can see the breakdown there. So these incidents come in various categories, and we are going to see the categories. Next, please. So yeah, this is for the African region. As you can see here, as of November, we have like 7 incidents, and you can see the number of culprits, and you can see the breakdown as well. Next, please. So some major incidents that are happening on the internet. This one happened a couple of weeks back. That was the 25th last month. So as you can see here, there is this is an hijack, a BGP hijack that happened on the internet. A lot of these things are happening on a hourly basis. You can go to the website bgpstream.com to have a full picture of what is going on the internet, what are the outages, the route leaks, and so on and so forth. Next, please. So the same incident, you see the number of countries that were affected by this single incident. There were There were a lot of them. Next, please. And here you will see the number of prefixes that got affected. So at the beginning, it was like 2,500 prefixes, and then it rose to 4,500. Then it got down to 500 prefixes that were affected. And so, when these incidents happen, they cause outages for an organization, a country, and even a region. Next, please. As you saw for this example, you saw that many countries were affected, depending on the tier of the network that is affected. So here, the way BGP operates comes with 3 problems. All right, I will say 2 of them because the third one is not like directly related to routing. So the first one is called prefix hijacked. The second one is route leak, and the third one, IP spoofing. So IP spoofing is not, as I said, it's not directly linked to routing, but it's also an issue that we want to tackle because it causes a lot of problem on the internet. Next slide, please. So the 3 incidents that I just showed, you have the explanations there. So what is a route hijack? A route hijack is an incident whereby some other organization decides to originate maybe part of your prefix or your entire block. A route leak is when you decide to share a route that is not yours, maybe to your upstream or to networks that you're not their transit. And IP spoofing is when a source IP is being wrongly used. So I will use the IP of some other organizations. Meanwhile, I'm not entitled to use that. Next slide, please. So when looking at prefix hijack, this diagram illustrates it well. So if you look at AS64-500 is the upstream provider of 501 and 502. So they will propagate the prefixes of their customers over the internet. Now, at a certain point in time, let's say AXX decides to originate maybe the entire block of one of the customers, or even like part of it, a more specific block of their resources. What will happen in this situation is that parts or even all the internet will believe that, all right, these resources are now in this location, so that's where we are going to go and look for the services. So if you have services like maybe mail, web services, DNS, and all of those, they could be affected. So the most famous one that we encountered happened in 2008 when Pakistan Telecom tried to block YouTube in their country. So they did originate the prefix of YouTube, and because their upstream provider did not filter, that announcement went to the internet. All the internet started believing that YouTube was in Pakistan. It caused outage for YouTube for a period of time. These things, they happen. They can stay for an hour, a minute, days, months, and so on. It depends the level of all right. So it depends on the level of the incidents. Sometimes troubleshooting might be very, very difficult, and you need to troubleshoot to be able to solve the problem. Next slide, please. So here, this is an example of prefix hijack that I took on the internet this morning. So it happened on the 15th. That's yesterday. And the prefix is 156.241.1280/18, which is normally supposed to be advertised by AS136800. That is Zhang Xingtung. This is their prefix. But at a certain point in time, a more specific block chunk of that network was advertised by AS 138628, right? And when they start advertising this specific block, if there are services that are sitting on that specific /24, those services will now be delocated, and if they might cause outages. So you see here the original block is a /18, and this network is originating a /24. Next slide, please. So that was prefix hijack. Now, what's a prefix leak or a route leak? So to illustrate, if you look at our network that we had again, you have 64,500 with the same two customers, but one of the customer is now like multi-homing, having two transit providers. Let's take the example of Google advertising the network 8.8.8.0/24. The AS64500 learns this and share with their customers. Later on, the second customer, one of the customer, learns the same route from another upstream and decides to propagate it to their upstream. Now, this upstream start believing that there is a better way to go to Google, and it's through their customer. Now, all the requests to Google from the other customers will go through this network. And you see the problem here because customer 501 is paying for that link. So they will now start paying for wow. All right. So this is the second incident. Next slide, please. So this is an example of route leak. So I'm just being told that 1 minute is left. I didn't see the time going. So this is an example. Next slide, please. So the third incident, as I explained, is IP spoofing, whereby someone decides to, forge packet with wrong IP addresses and, send them to the internet. Most of the time, this attack is the IP spoofing is used for denial of service attacks. Next slide, please. Skip the next again. This is some reports from Qaeda on the internet. The slides will be shared so people can get access to it. So next, please. So when these problems are presented like this, what are the solutions? We have many solutions. The basic one is prefix and ASPAT filters. And you have tools like RPKI, IRR. Now we have like BGP-SEC, which is being standardized at the IETF. Next slide, please. But most of these technologies are not like well adopted in the industry. So the solution that we are proposing here is called mutually agreed norm for routing security, whereby we have a list of actions that we recommend. And since the internet is like a collaborative network, the understanding is that one network alone cannot secure the entire internet. It is something that we should do it collaboratively. So next slides, please. I will just summarize and present the program, the various manners programs, then we can conclude them. So next slide. So manners, we have 4 manners programs: manners for network operators, manners for internet exchange points, manners for content delivery networks, and manners for equipment vendors. Let's look at what it has in the manners for network operators. Next slide, please. So for the network operators, it was initiated in 2014, and the aim, it was done by a group of network operators. The aim is, let's come together, let's look at actions that's current best practices that we can do and make sure that we have like a more secure internet. Next slide, please. So the program, the manners for network operators, is 4 actions. The first action is filtering. Filtering is like the golden rule in BGP. Never do BGP without filtering. Always make sure you filter what you advertise to the internet and what you receive. What you're advertising to the internet, make sure these are your prefaces and the prefaces of your downstream customers, and don't advertise prefaces for any other network. And make sure you filter all bogons being the private space, the space that is not yet allocated by the regional internet registries, and every space that is being reserved. The next action, which is not compulsory, is the anti-spoofing, whereby it is recommended that at the border of your network, you enable anti-spoofing, either by using unicast reverse path forwarding or by activating access lists to block prefaces that you think are not good to traverse your network. The third action is the coordination, where we invite all network operators to avail up-to-date information on the available platforms. The available platforms, you have the peering DB, you have the IRR, like for the AFRINIC region, you have the WHOIS database, where you need to make sure that your information is maintained accurately. And the last action here is called the global validation, where we provide the IRR database, that's the WHOIS database, and we encourage people to create their Route 6 objects, and also document their routing policy using the RPSL language, and also use RPKI in route origin authorization and route origin validation. I will stop here because my time is over. You see, Arthur is here to remind me that my time is over. But yeah, that's like in a nutshell, the Manners program. And we invite more people to participate precisely in activating more RPKI on your networks. If you need support, we are always available to support. And thank you for your time. Over to you, Arthur.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I know that it was not easier for you to give some insightful information within 20 minutes, but you are an expert, so we count on you, okay, to do that. So is there any question? I don't see any question in the chat, and thank you very much. What we can learn here is security is not something that we can achieve alone, okay, sitting in our corner. Mutualizing and collaborating around our effort might help to build a resilient and secure internet for all. Thank you very much, Stephen. It is a great pleasure for me to welcome again Mr. Jean Robert to me, who is going to share his ideas on CVS initiative. So before moving forward, for those who are not familiar with our community, Jean Robert is an active AFRINIC community members, and he is a security researcher and the executive director of Africa Set. So Jean Robert, thank you very much for joining us today. So you have now the floor. Jean Robert, we can hear you. Hello, Jean Robert. You can activate your audio. Yes.
Unfortunately, we cannot hear you. Please press on the channel, English channel, if you'd like to speak in English. Thank you.
We can hear you. You can activate or unmute your microphone. You can look at, I guess, under your name. on the top left, you have the icon of the microphone. If it's a mute, please click on that to unmute it.
Arthur, may I suggest that we switch any other presentation and then maybe Jean-Robert can come later?
Oh, okay. Okay. So let's move on now to Mr. Okay, good. Thank you for the suggestion, Eddie. So let's move on to the next presentation. The topic is explore team SAM rules through the use of community offering. That presentation will be given by Mr. Brian Davenport. And for those who are not familiar with him, Brian Davenport is a solution engineer at Team Simro, and is a person who's helping partner implementation and providing services offering. Okay, is focusing on NUBIS professionally, and is passionate about working with smart people to solve hard problems. So we think that during this presentation, Mr. Brian will bring us with interesting solution still related to security. Thank you very much, Mr. Brian Davenport. Thank you for joining us. You have now the floor. Hello? Mr. Brian, we don't hear you. Could you unmute yourself? Click on the mic icon, please. If you look at below your name, you will see the mic icon.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear
All
you.
right.
Thank you. Yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah. Go ahead now.
All right. Okay, and then this should turn my camera on so you guys can hear me and see me, right?
Yes, we can.
All right.
Please go ahead,
Okay.
Mr. Brian.
Okay. So first off, thank you all for your time. Sorry about the little audio issues that everybody was having. I was able to figure it out. So I'm going to take you through a slide presentation on Team Cymru and our community services. This is going to last about, I think about 20 minutes. Is that right? I'm sure you guys will let me know when time's up, but I know the schedules just kind of shifted a little bit, so I'm just kind of catching up here, but here we go. First off, thank you all for your time, and let's just get rolling here. So what I'm going to do is first just kind of start and tell you a little bit about myself. So I live in Maine, so it is 6:12 a.m. where I am here, and it's, as you can see, very dark out still. Usually gets bright in about an hour or so. But I'm a solutions engineer here for Team Cymru. So a lot of what I do is educate people on some of our community services, which I'm going to be talking about today. And I'll talk a little bit about Nimbus TM, which is our NetFlow solution, and just kind of what we are as an organization and what we aim to do. So thank you all for your time. I'm just going to go to the next slide here. So Team Cymru, just as an organization, is a threat intelligence provider. So they provide things like host reputation lists. They have solutions that different enterprise companies will use for threat intelligence, things of that nature. But the part of Team Cymru that I work for kind of sits inside this organization, which is Outreach. And Outreach creates free solutions and provides them out to internet operators around the globe. I'm going to talk about Nimbus in a little more detail here and the unwanted traffic removal service. But there are tons of other things you can find on our website at teamcymru.com. So I know the previous speaker was talking about filtering bogons. So we have a bogon reference, which you can either peer with or pull down as a list, which basically will take all the unallocated address space and kind of mix it up with just generic bogons, right? And provide that as a list you can pull down and use as your filter rules. So that's an example of a free solution that we offer. I'm not going to go into more detail on bogons here, but you can certainly sign up for that on the website if you're interested in getting that list. But I'll talk a little bit more about some of the other things that we're doing here. So let me just start with, I'm going to skip a few slides just in the interest of time, just because I had that audio issue. And we'll go right into the main topic, which is going to be around flow data or NetFlow data. So I've been working with NetFlow data for about a decade. This is a protocol that you can export from routers, switches, firewalls. And basically, the reason why I enjoy working with it so much, or I've kind of stuck with it as a protocol to learn, is it's extremely easy to set up and get going on your network. Right. So instead of having to do something like maybe like a packet capture, right, where you're deploying some appliance, right, or using something where you have to go and install agents everywhere in order to get data, NetFlow data is something you're just simply turning on the router, right? So you go into a router, switch, or firewall, you just enable it, and then you start sending it to a collector, and you're going to start being able to get reporting on it. What I'll talk about a little bit is kind of how we have a solution where you can use that for free and get some threat intelligence with NetFlow data. But there are tons of other use cases for this protocol. So if you're, interested in learning more about ways you can use it, you can connect with me on LinkedIn if you have any questions. But I'll just focus right on basically the 3 most common questions that I get about NetFlow data. But if you have more specific ones, you can certainly ask me. So typically when people start the process of getting flows going on their network, and I'm helping them maybe get it set up, they want to know, like, where should I collect data from? Like, I have all this network equipment, routers, switches, and firewalls. Like, which ones should I enable and collect NetFlow data from? And then, those questions kind of lead into the follow-up questions of, like, how is turning this protocol on going to affect the overall health of my network and my network devices? So is it going to actually impact my bandwidth since I'm sending data somewhere? And since I'm turning on other functionality on these routers or switches, is it going to impact the CPU, right? So if we take a look at this slide here, right? If you have this woman in the bottom, right, and if she was to send data, right, outbound of that particular interface, right, and then to either peer 2 or to either peer 3, the way that this protocol works, I thought I was just getting a question here in the chat. I'm just looking. Okay. So if this woman here, right, is sending data to peer 3, where is that data going to get monitored, right? And NetFlow basically has 2 configurations. One is a global set of configurations, which would be, hey, I want to send flow data to a particular collector on this particular port. And then you have interface level configurations, where you're actually going into a particular interface and you're saying, I want to set up a monitor on this interface, right? So from within here, right, I would see all of the traffic coming, north or south from our lady here on the left, right, as it goes inbound to this router, right? And then if I was to get data coming back into this interface here, right, I'm just not going to observe that until it comes out of one of the interfaces that has flow monitors applied to it. With most network devices, if you're running an IPv6 network, just turning on that functionality will give you reporting on both IPv4 and IPv6 traffic. Let me go into a little more detail here. Let's kind of want to show this other slide. So this is a basic NetFlow packet. Within this packet, or this kind of header, what you'll notice is you have these key fields. So destination IP, source IP, destination port, source interface, and protocol. And then we have a non-key field, which is bytes. So the way the flows are typically generated from a device is, as long as the key fields are staying the same, the non-key fields are able to increment. So the question of, we just kind of went over how I enable it or where I enable it. It's basically you're turning it on at a device level and then enabling it on particular interfaces. The question of how it affects my bandwidth is kind of represented in this here, the slide here, right? Because if I was to have a particular conversation, right, that went, 600 bytes, as long as those key fields remain the same, you're all good. So theoretically, if you have two IP addresses communicating, they would be allowed to, and they transfer, like, let's say 10 gig of traffic. As long as the IPs and the ports don't change, you can represent that with just a few flows, right? It's only when the key fields, so you can see this new flow down here where the source and destination IP address change, right? That's going to tell the router that, hey, this conversation ended up top, and I can then export that flow data to a particular collector. Regarding CPU of a device, typically what I see is a maybe 5% uptick in memory utilization. So for the most part, turning on NetFlow data is not going to affect the CPU of the device, right? It's very negligible. That said, like, your mileage might vary. I haven't seen issues with this in a long time, but I have seen issues where, a particular, like an old Cisco chassis or something like that might have, performance issues by enabling it. So usually what I say is, if you're concerned at all about turning on flow data, start, maybe start sampling it or just enabling it on a few interfaces and watch the CPU. But for the most part, you should be good to go with just enabling this protocol, turning it on, and sending it to a collector. You could do it in production, but obviously follow your corporate policies, whatever. Don't go and say, well, Brian on a webinar told me I could turn this on at, noon on a Friday. Follow whatever your policies might be. Now, that said, when you turn it on, right, and you're sending flow data, you're going to have somewhere to send it. So like the Bogon reference, which, I was talking about as a means by which you can filter Bogon traffic in BGP filters. Nimbus TM is another community service that we've built. It's cloud-based, free to use, and basically the special sauce with Nimbus is that it's going to enrich the flow data. So where we had that original flow packet up top, which is, destination IP, source IP, and all the ports and interfaces and protocols, what Nimbus is going to do is add in all the red attributes, right? So you'll get the autonomous system name as opposed to just IP address. So it becomes a lot easier to start consolidating traffic and reporting on it. But also what it will do is map all the IP addresses it sees against Team Cymru's commercial reputation feeds. So it becomes a really good way to take your network traffic and then compare it to reputation feeds in order to see, like, do I have any compromised assets on my network, or if I'm transporting, or selling internet to, different internet service providers, I might be able to present them with a report to show them, hey, here's the percentage of traffic you're sending me that is showing up on these blacklists. But it's really a good way to compare your own infrastructure and then also maybe, internet traffic that you're providing, right, and comparing that to the list. The way it looks within the product, right, this is going to be really hard to see here. If you squint, you can see it. But the idea is it uses Kibana, and Kibana is just a graphical user interface that's open source. It'll give you nice charting where you can kind of see how much traffic you're sending to particular autonomous systems. It'll present alerting where it'll show different lists of botnet actors that you might be participating with, and just give you a means to see that on the network, right? The last thing I'll talk about, just because we launched our version 2 of it, is the UTTRS system, which is a community-driven approach to DDoS mitigation. UTTRS is similar to remote trigger black hole, where you'll be making a BGP announcement maybe to your upstream provider to say, stop sending traffic, inbound to me to this IP address because my network's getting overwhelmed. What makes UTTRS a little bit different is it's more of a global black holing of traffic. So if we look at this next slide here, right, in a example network where we have a bunch of different clients that are coming in over the internet, right, and heading to a server, right, if this was something like a DDoS attack, right, where I have this network instability because now this is all bad traffic coming inbound to a particular victim, what you could do is make a remote trigger black hole, right, to your upstream, like I was saying, but in this example, we still have all of this bad traffic that's just flowing across the internet, right? So all these service providers in line are still passing traffic that ultimately is going to get dropped at the edge of the network because I'm black holing it at my service provider. So the way UTTRS aims to solve this is, as opposed to making just the remote trigger black hole to your upstream, you can peer with Team Cymru, and we'll ingest that BGP announcement from you. So to say, like, stop sending traffic to this IP address, and then we'll announce it out or propagate it out to the other members of the UTTRS system. So we're able to, kind of stop the DDoS attacks more at their starting point, right? So we kind of go, upstream to the entire internet and say, hey guys, this person's under attack. Let's stop sending traffic to this particular IP address that they're requesting we stop sending traffic to. And then as the provider that made that announcement, you can withdraw it, when you want the traffic to resume. We did just launch a version 2 of unwanted traffic removal service a few days ago. So it's been live now. It was actually last week. But it adds in the capability to use FlowSpec, which gives you more knobs you can turn with how you're blocking traffic. So as opposed to just saying, stop sending traffic to this particular IP address, you could say, stop sending traffic to this IP address on this port, right? So if it's like an amplification attack over DNS or something, you can be more specific with the traffic you want to drop. We're adding in RPKI validation, which is just another layer of security to make sure the announcements are coming from, the ASNs that own the IPs they're announcing. Adding in support for peering over IPv6 and receiving IPv6 routes, and support for larger prefixes, right? So instead of just announcing /32s, you can announce up to a /25 or /49 for IPv6. So I went pretty quick there. I think I did okay on time. Again, I apologize for the audio issue I had right at the beginning there. I'm glad we're all able to hear, but I'll just say thank you all for your time. I appreciate you having me. Please do check out our community services. And if you're out there, connect with me on LinkedIn. I love to see, the people that I'm actually presenting to. So thank you all for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Brian, for your insightful presentation on the solution Cymru is offering and how we can implement it to improve the internet bandwidth and traffic. Thank you very much for your presentation. Is there any question for Brian? I don't see any question. We will move back now to Jean-Robert. Jean-Robert, please have the floor. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, is it better now?
Yes, it's better. Thank you.
Okay,
Have the floor now.
Yeah, I had to change my headset. Okay. So thank you, Actual. Thank you all. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. What I would like to do today is to give, can we go to the next slide, please? To give a little bit, let me talk about CVE, Common Vulnerability Exposure. And I'm doing that as part of my role from the CVE Outreach and Communication Working Group, and also for promoting the emergence of CNAs within the African continent. So basically, I will explain how CVEs are produced, stimulate good practice in our region as consumer of CVE, and also measure the appetite to produce CVEs within the region. So whether you are a technology provider or a user, consumer, or have a hardware, software on your phone, I think you are familiar with vulnerability, and also you have been asked at least one time, if not often, to upload security patch or security update within your device. So the way it works, go to the next slide, please, is that usually vendor or application provider, developer, product teams, researcher, collectively known as finders, discover vulnerabilities. When then they discover vulnerabilities, they will try to fix them. Then they will assign a number that is known as CVE ID to this vulnerability, and then publish within a public database those vulnerabilities along with their security advisory. Most of you, if you are part of a national framework and in link with your national computer emergency response team, you have received these days different kind of alert, or even when you use equipment, you are, and if you are connected to those product teams that product vulnerabilities, you may have been receiving those days different kind of alerts, exchange, LCE, issue with this equipment, etc., etc. And within those alerts, you have an ID, which is again called CVE ID. So what does CVE help you to do? It helps secure network. It helps provide a standard identifier for a given vulnerability or exposure. It facilitates the sharing of data across separate network, secure database, and tool, and provide a baseline for evaluating the coverage of an organization's security tool. Today, so you have the statistics there. We estimate that by 2021, we will be at around 15,562 published CVEs. Next slide, please. Okay, so how does CVE record look like and what it is? So a CVE has three elements. It is a unique identifier that enable automation and multi-party to discuss, share, and correlate information about the vulnerability, knowing that you guys are referring to the same thing. So you have the identifier. Then the second field is the description, and usually describe the vulnerability to enable differentiation between and among other CVEs. And then you have the reference. The reference usually link you to the public to a public disclosure and allow the public to obtain additional information. So next slide, please. So we will look at a CVE record and see the different fields that are on this record. So you have the record. For example, 2021, 39855. It tells you, so I'm putting a little bit more here. It tells you that this CVE has been released in 2021, and you have a number attached to it. It can be different in some cases. For example, this year, I have assigned CVEs with number 2019 or even 2017 or 2018 because the product in question were end of sales and end of life in those years. So it depends. Usually it's like this, but it can depend also on the vendor policy or the publisher policy. So there are minimum requirements that you see when you read the CVE information. You have the ID, you have the product name, then the version affected or fixed, the problem type. Usually the problem type links you to another database that is called common weakness enumeration, where you have, in fact, a list of hardware and software weaknesses. Then you can have the impact. The impact also link you to another database that is called CAPEC, where you have a list of common attack pattern. And then you have the description. Usually, you have a little description related to the CVE ID and etc. And you have the reference that can lead you to the URL or the usually a knowledge-based article or the URL or somewhere where you can see different information related to the CVE. So those are the minimum requirements. Actually, we are at this time on version 4. In version 5, there are a couple of optional fields where you can see, for example, some information about who finds the vulnerabilities. You can see some information related to linking the vulnerability to an attack or a dictionary of taxonomy. You can see different information, specific information specific information that the vendor wants to disclose. But whether we are speaking about version 5 or version 4, those are the minimum requirements that you see in the CVE. When I started, next slide, please. So when I started the presentation, I talked about exploring the appetite of being able, especially at this time where we are producing within the national framework, software application, and even hardware. I wanted to explore the appetite of us within the continent and the ecosystem, not only consuming CVEs, but also producing CVE. As of today, there are about 201 producer CVE, what we call CNA, in 32 countries, and there are none from the African countries. But we do know that we produce software, we produce hardware, and we might want to find a way to communicate information related to the vulnerability within those equipment, those software, those applications that we are producing, and share them across our national framework, the continent, but also if we have ambition to see what we are producing being used outside the continent at a global level, being able to share those information at the global level. So how does the CVE program work? The mission is to identify, define, and catalog public disclosure security vulnerability. It's a community-based effort. The vulnerability are discovered, CVE are assigned, and then they are published in the CVE database. And CVE enables two or more people or tool to refer to a vulnerability and know that they are talking about the same thing. Next slide, please. So again, as I said, it's a community-driven program. So you have the ecosystem of vulnerability disclosure. It can be anybody. Then the CVE program is overseen by a CVE board. The participation is by invitation. Then you have a couple of working groups that make sure that the program works. You have those who produce CVEs, so we call them the CNAs, CVE Novel Authorities. So as of today, there are 201. The 201 EM will be on board today. And then you have also the ecosystem of security tools vendor around. Next slide, please. Then what is a CNA? It's an organization responsible for assigning CVE to vulnerability and for creating and publishing information about the vulnerability and the associating CVE record. CNA usually have scopes of responsibility for vulnerability identification and publishing. For example, my role as a CNA participating in this program is that our scope is to assign vulnerability to our specific product. So it can be, a CNA can be a software vendor. It can be an open source project. It can be a coordination center. We've seen now more and more national CSIRT becoming a CNA and coordinating CV assignment within the national framework. It can be a bug bounty service provider. It can be a vulnerability researcher. When you find a vulnerability on a vendor's product, you can reach out to the vendor to assign a CVE to that. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so again, it allows you to control the information that you want to publish related to the vulnerability, to share information related to vulnerability globally, and also demonstrate that you have a mature vulnerability management practice and a commitment to cybersecurity to current and potential customers. Next slide. Okay, so the only requirement, so basically there are two requirements. One is to have a public vulnerability disclosure policy, then to have a source where you publish those vulnerabilities, for example, a security advisory page, and to agree to the CVE terms of use. But it's very light. There's no fee. Next slide. Yeah, there is no fee, there is no contract to sign, and it's a voluntary effort, basically donating your time for your own benefits. Next slide, please. Yeah, so if you want to become a CNA, you contact the CVE program, you complete the registration form, you agree to term of use, you attend an introduction section, and you complete practice example. I'm happy to help anyone within the community who wants to become a CNA. Next. Okay, so this slide is 2 weeks old. We are at 201 CNA as of today, and covering about 32 plus countries. Next slide. Okay, so community involvement, the program is driven by community that are organized through different working groups. You have the list of the working group there. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so globally, what I want you to keep from this presentation is that we are stimulating the production of CNAs and CVEs within our ecosystem. The mission of the program is to identify, define, and catalog publicly disclosed security vulnerability. There's one CVE record for each vulnerability in the catalog. The vulnerability are discovered, then assigned, and published by organizations from around the world that have partnered with the CVE program. Partner publish CVE record to communicate consistent description of vulnerabilities. Information technology and cybersecurity professionals use CVE record to ensure that they are discussing the same issue and to coordinate their efforts to prioritize and address the vulnerability. And if you want to learn more, you have the link to the NEO CVE website that has been launched last month. So I've tried to catch up on time, and I would like to welcome any question that you may have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jean-Robert. We are running after the times, but we have one question for you, Jean-Robert. If you can quickly answer that question is from Tiago Camquier Hervé. Good morning. The CV program is only for the African continent. How do I know if a vulnerability has already been discovered in another country outside Africa? You have 0 and 2 seconds to reply.
Yeah, 2 seconds. The CV program is not from the only from the African continent. It's a global program. You have at this time 30 participating countries with 201 CNA producing CV. When you go to the CV record, go to www.cve.org and you will see information on how to address the CV record. You have a link over there to search on different CVs and see which CV are affected by who, related to what product, and etc. And you can even filter by vendor, by what we call weaknesses, and like you can run different kind of filter on the database. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jean-Robert. We are really sorry for the obvious question we might not be able to reply now. So thank you very much for your participation, Jean-Robert, and thank you very much for the participant. We are going to take a 5-minute break and come back again to resume with the remaining presentation. We will be having 4 interesting presentations. So please stick with us, and we come back in 5 minutes. I give the call back to Magali.
Thank you so much. So we are going to have a very short break of 5 minutes, and then we'll continue with the second part of the program of our technical presentations by African and international experts. Let me share a few announcements. We have opened a survey on the language that you have chosen to follow the debate. So please, I encourage you to participate in this survey. And we thank everybody, and we thank our sponsors, MTEL Business, Africa, Meta, and Team Kimru. In the African ISP category sponsors, we thank DNS Africa. Thank you very much to all our sponsors. You will find a link to the survey on the platform. Please participate. This will help us understand in which language you're following the debates, and to improve ourselves for the future meetings online. In addition, by responding to the surveys, you will have a chance to win a prize that will be announced this Thursday, the 18th of November, during the closing cocktail. If you're interested in the IPv6, please register on the link here below, and you will benefit from a discount of 5%. So the code is AF3350. This concludes my announcements. You will find them also written in the chat. May I also encourage you to contact our team if you have questions regarding AFRINIC or the internet ecosystem. You will find the menu on the menu an option to contact the relevant experts. Thank you very much.
Hello?
Roger,
Okay,
we
thank
can
you.
hear you.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you very much. I hope that you had a good break. We resume our session on technical presentation. I'm really happy and delighted to welcome Miss Bromilov to give a presentation about artificial intelligence in intrusion detection. So it's important to know that Brom is a software engineer at AFRINIC. So you have the floor now, dear colleague.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brume, and I'll be discussing with you today on how artificial intelligence can help reduce cybersecurity threats or can help to detecting cybersecurity threats. 6 months ago in the United States, in some states, they had like shortage of gas and diesel. And this was because of a panic attack. But why were these people panic? Why did they panic? And this was because in May, some group of hackers decided to hack a company's gas line. So they used ransomware attack. And before we go into what the ransomware attack is, how did they get access to these people, to the company's network? It's said by Bloomberg that this group of hackers were able to get it through a user who maybe no longer works in that company, but has access to the VPN. So it's possible they got this address or this the username and password by phishing. And the person's account did not have a multi-factor authentication. And so it was easy. Once they knew the password and the username, it was easy to get access to this company's VPN. So they got access to the company's VPN, and then they encrypted the files of the company and locked them out. So the company could not have access to their sites. And then because of that, or to their network rather, because of that, the company had to shut down their services of distributing oil or energy. And this made people, panic, because this company is one of the highest energy companies that produce fuel, diesel, and all sort of other energies to the citizens in the US. And so people started panicking. The fuel price went up. This example just shows how a group of humans in anywhere in the world with just a computer and an internet can cause havoc to a whole country. Now, these humans could be as little as 6 or as old as 50. But this just goes on to show how important it is for us to address cybersecurity threats. Stories like this are very common. We see stories of how people hack companies, but we don't see as much stories of this hacking in Africa. Is it because Africa is blessed? Well, Africa is blessed, but why is it that these attacks only happen? I mean, we hear this news of attacks rarely in Africa. This is because most African companies, their services are not most of them are not online. But ever since COVID came, we've seen an increase in Africans' networks or Africans' companies on the internet. In fact, I was reading something, and the publication from Bloomberg says that there has been above 1,000% increase of companies who are now online. This is because for people to work, you have to use Zoom. Most companies are using VPN. Even my company, we make use of VPN. So it means now most companies in Africa are more prone to cybersecurity threats than before. If you look at this image on your screen, if you look at the left-hand side, I want you to take a look at it carefully. What can you see? If you look at the black image, the black color, you will see two men looking at each other, facing each other. If you concentrate on the white image, you will see a shape of an hourglass. What I've just said, almost everyone in this room will agree with me. There is nothing else here aside from what I have described. But why is it that what I've said, everyone agrees with it? This is because in the human brain, there is something very common with human intelligence, and that is pattern recognition. Everything we do today as humans has to do with recognizing patterns. The smell of food, solving physics, chemistry, whatever it is, drawing of arts has to do with pattern. If you don't draw the right pattern, then your pattern is not beautiful. And if your pattern is not beautiful and nobody can recognize it, that's the art. If it's not beautiful, people don't recognize it, then you're not really doing art. So almost everything we do today is about pattern recognition. Now, for cybersecurity, it is becoming rampant. Most of the talks we've heard today have been talking about cybersecurity threats and cybersecurity threats. And everyone wants to solve this issue. But can you really solve an issue you don't really understand how people who produce this issue work? So you need to first of all understand how these hackers behave. You need to understand their pattern before you prefer a solution, right? This is the beautiful thing of artificial intelligence. Now, what really is AI? We've spoken about how humans use pattern recognition in almost everything they do. And so AI says, or scientists come and say, you know what? Why don't we try to mimic how humans behave? I mean, humans are intelligent, but they cannot do two things at the same time. They cannot multitask very well. We are not really as fast as computers or as machines. So why don't we try to tap into how humans think, pass this knowledge to computers, and see how awesome they can actually behave? And that's how AI came to be. So AI tries to get our intelligence. That's why it's termed artificial, because it's not natural or God-given. And so we have different types of machine learning. For the sake of this presentation, it's been streamlined to 3. Some people would say it's 4, but I'd rather leave it at 3. So we have the supervised learning, unsupervised, and reinforcement. What are the 3 different, what is the difference between these 3 types of machine learning algorithms? So AI is like a big umbrella, and under AI, you have machine learning. So machine learning is like the word machine learning, it means machine learns, basically. So what is supervised learning? As the word states, supervised, it means that the computer learns on how to behave in a certain set of way or how to classify objects by actually having the answers. What do I mean? So when you write an algorithm or you write a logic on the computer and say, anytime you see this, so you write a logic and then you train that logic. Now, I want to go back to the initial exam when I was explaining about pattern. You see, while we are growing up, almost all of us, we've been exposed to the same thing. We learned A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 2 words, multiplication. So almost everybody, has been exposed to everything at the same time. And so because of that, we know what it is. So it is the same thing with supervised learning. So for supervised learning, you tell the computer, this is what this means. And then whenever you test it, it gives you the answer. For unsupervised learning, you don't tell it you don't give it the answer to the problem. You just put, you give it data and then tell it, I want you to make sense of this data. And then it does its wonders. And for reinforcement learning, where you find in games, what they do is, it's almost like unsupervised, but if there is a change in the environment, it's smart enough to notice this change and make adjustments to its logic. So that's about AI. So next, we want to look at the classes of attack on network intrusions. So we have different types of attacks. We have the DOS, user to root, root to local, and probe. These are most common attacks on networks. And we've had different types of intrusion detection systems. You have the host intrusions, the network host intrusions, and the anomaly. So the anomaly is what births machine learning. So for the sake of this presentation, this particular topic is a research that I did. And so just to show you how artificial intelligence is very good, I used two data sets, KDD and UNSW NB15, which has different intrusions in it. And I used this particular data set to run my test. And so when I got my data, I cleaned my data, converted it to a CSV, stored it on a server, and I started, writing my logic to feed from this data. I'm trying to be fast because my time is about to be up. And so what I did is I splitted this data. I used 75% to train and 25% to test. And so that is what you have on the screen. So quickly going to the results. Now, after I wrote my logic, I used three algorithms. I had SVM, random forest, and fuzzy C-means. So I tested these three algorithms on those two data sets I mentioned earlier, and these are the results we find. I also tested these three algorithms on traditional intrusion systems, like the lot of intrusion systems we have today. So I used my logic and on those particular intrusion systems, and they performed way better than all the intrusion, most, please not all, most of the intrusion detection systems we have today. So if you look at my screen, you will see that SVM and random forest perform better on the KDD dataset, while random forest and fuzzy means perform better on the other datasets. So on the average, we have random forest, preferring better on both KDD and the other datasets. So that being said, this is just an explanation to show how we can implement machine learning algorithms to detect network intrusions on a system or network. So that is the end of my. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
I don't see any question for you. Thank you again for your time. I would like now to move to the next presenter, Mr. Fagani Dambayuk from Meta. Mr. Fagani is going to give a presentation on accelerating the rollout of high-speed connectivities across Africa. So, Mr. Fagani, you have now the floor. Hello, Mr. Fagani, are you there? Hello, Mr. Fagani? If it's not ready, we move to the following presenter. The topic is MIRA, a framework to increase internet resilience, and this presentation will be given by Dr. Amrit Foki. Amrit Foki is internet measurement and data expert at Internet Society. Is also my neighbor in Albion. So, Amrit, you have the floor.
Hello, Arthur. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, you put me in the spotlight a few minutes earlier.
Yeah, that is good.
So yeah, I had to jump from one meeting to another. you owe me a coffee for that.
Yeah, no problem. So don't forget you have 20 minutes, including the question and answer.
All right. So give me 1 minute now to look for my presentation because I wasn't prepared.
So it will remain 19 minutes. So
19 minutes. Yeah, I'll be.
So our next presenter will be after Dr. Amrish, will be Barak Coutinho, Mr. Barak Coutinho, who is the General Manager of Africa TRD. So, dear Mr. Barak, please get ready after Dr. Amrish's presentation. Thank you. Amrish, go ahead, please.
Yeah, it's coming. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So let me start then. Arthur, thank you for giving me the floor today. And it's a pleasure for me to talk about our project, which is called MIRA, Measuring Internet Resilience in Africa. And my name is Amrish Fokia. I work for the Internet Society as an internet measurement and data expert. And it is a project that we have been working alongside with AFRINIC. And the good news is that actually today itself, we have launched the platform, which is called the Internet Resilience Index. I will share the link a little bit later. So it's not a surprise for anyone that specifically in our region, there are many countries which are unfortunately not benefiting from all the good things about the internet. There are countries, for example, where there are frequent internet interruptions, whether it is because of bad engineering or lack of infrastructure, or whether it is because, unfortunately, some countries are shutting down the internet. So not everyone is actually have the same experience of a good internet connectivity across the African region. And it is also the case in many other regions of the world. So we came up with that idea that, okay, how do we actually measure resilience? It is such a vague notion. And then many things can happen on the internet. I mentioned about disruptions. I mentioned about redundancy or networks not being well provisioned. But there are also other cases such as, for example, people do not have access to proper electricity. In many countries right now, if you do not have a proper electric connection, you will not get a good quality internet as well, because you will be taken down very often during the day. So what is this project about? So AFRINIC and ISOC decided to join hands to build a framework that can easily present some information to any stakeholder, whether it is an end user or a policymaker or an engineer. If you would like to have some information about what is the state of resilience of your country, this is the type of the information that this project and this framework can provide. As mentioned before, it is an effort between the Internet Society and AFRINIC, and alongside these two partners, we have other academic institutions, for example, the University of Cape Town, the Simula Research Lab, and CMU Africa, who actually helped us build the concept around the Internet Resilience Index. So at the beginning of the project, we started to send out some surveys. So we wanted to get a feel of what do people really understand by resilience, and out of the different aspects of resilience, which are the ones that they would rate the most, so that we get a sense of what is important for some stakeholders and maybe what is less important for some other stakeholders. In the course of the project, we signed an MOU with AFRINIC. We have also published a quite lengthy white paper describing in very great details the different aspects of the projects and also different components of the project. And we have also tested what we call the pods infrastructure, which is basically a network of devices that we have that we are currently testing. Basically, these devices, they are deployed in various networks on the continent, and they hold existing measurement infrastructure, whether it is MLab software probes to measure bandwidth, or RIPE Atlas software probes to measure all the different metrics that Atlas allows you to measure. So let me start with the one big component of the project, which is the Internet Resilience Index. So the definition is simple. The index itself is composed of different indicators, each of them measuring an aspect of internet resilience. And basically, we group all those different aspects that we call indicators into 4 main pillars that represent basically a robust internet infrastructure. So our theoretical framework is as follows. We have 4 pillars. The first one being infrastructure, the second one being performance, then we have enabling technologies and security, and finally we have local ecosystem and market readiness. So we built our framework based on existing state-of-the-art ways to build an index. So there are different indices out there. For example, you have the mobile connectivity index by the GSMA, or you have the Global Cybersecurity Index by the ITU. So we have followed very similar concept to build our own index. So the first concept, of course, is breaking down that vague notion of resilience into measurable aspects. So this is what we are seeing here. So for example, for infrastructure, we have 3 dimensions. The first one is about the cable ecosystem, whether it is terrestrial cable or undersea cable, mobile connectivity, whether you have good coverage in terms of mobile connectivity, and enabling infrastructure is everything related to the availability of data centers or the number of IXPs, so on and so forth. So we have 4 different pillars, each of them having different dimensions, and each of them capturing to some extent some aspect of resilience. So for this, we need good quality of data, and our model is based, I would say, on a quantitative concept rather than a qualitative concept, in the sense that we are not collecting data about the perception of quality, for example, or the perception of how good the internet is. We are collecting empirical data based on evidence, and for this, all our indicators, we needed them to follow a set of criteria. The first of all, they need to be relevant. Relevant meaning that they need to provide some indication of resilience in a selected country. They need to be accurate, because we need good quality information, and we need to also understand the technique or the methodology that was used to curate those secondary data. Coverage is important as well, because to build an index, we need to have good coverage in terms of all the indicators that we have selected needs to cover all the countries, or at least most of them. So our threshold is that we will discard an indicator if, let's say, 25% of countries cannot or do not have information on that indicator. Timeliness is also important, because we want data which is fresh and that will give us an indication of the actual situation, and not the situation that was probably 5 or 10 years ago. So without going into much detail, so each of the pillars are made of dimensions. So dimensions are just a way to say that it is a group of indicators. So taking again the cable ecosystem, we have 3 indicators. The first one is the number of international gateways. this is the number of exit points that a country has. So the more exit points you have, it means that if one goes down, you can have other parts or other exit points that can be used to reroute your traffic. There is another indicator in that dimension is how close is the percentage of the population to a fiber point of presence. And finally, power availability is the stability of the power grid basically in that country. So we have curated these data from various sources, as you can see here, from Fiber, ITU, World Bank, GSMA, so on and so forth. So the second one is about performance. Performance, we are looking into UCLA data. So UCLA, you might know that service which allows you to run speed tests. So it is a crowdsourced platform which collects data from various places in the world and then provide this data in an aggregated fashion. So we use that data as a metric to quantify the quality of service for fixed networks and mobile networks. And the third pillar is, the third pillar is enabling technologies and security, in which we have different indicators, for example, IPv6 adoption, the percentage of websites seen in the country using HTTPS, DNSSEC adoption, routing security, so on and so forth. Finally, we have what we call local ecosystem and market readiness, where basically here we want to understand what is the market structure like. Is it a competitive market or a less competitive market? Is the structure of the internet more providing a choke point? Because there might be cases where in some countries there is only 1 or 2 operators, and most of the transit is going through that operator, which means that there is some amount of choke point possible in that country. And let's say one of the service providers goes down, it might make the whole ecosystem very, very, very fragile. So these are the aspects that we measure in this pillar. Once we have all these data sources, so we have like 30 different indicators that we need to merge together. So we have a phase of weighting and aggregation. So as mentioned before, the way that we have done the weighting is based on the feedback that we have gathered from the surveys that we run at the beginning of the project, where we got a feel of what should be what is the importance of each and every dimension of our model. So for example, for infrastructure, cable ecosystem has a 40% weightage because we think it is very important to have that infrastructure in place before any other things that come, for example, enabling infrastructure, for example, IXPs or data centers. So it follows also what we call the life cycle of the internet, where first of all, you need a proper infrastructure and then the rest can come later. So once we have the weights in place, so we use a very simple formula, which is called the weighted sum formula. So we multiply the score by the weight, and then we add them at the indicator level. We do the same at the dimension level, and then we do the same at the pillar level to finally get the index. But before we do the aggregation, there is an important thing, maybe I haven't mentioned it here. There is an important aspect that we need to do is cleaning of the data and also normalizing the data. Because each of the data that we receive, as you can imagine, come on a different scale. An example would be the number of IXPs in the country can range from 1 to 10, but the number of or the percentage of spam infection will range from 0 to 100. So how do you set all the indicators on the same scale? We use what we call normalization techniques. In our case, we use the min-max normalization technique.
Amrish, sorry,
yeah.
2 minutes remaining.
Okay, yeah, I'm almost done. I'm almost done. So we have already started publishing the data. So this is just an example of how it looks like. You can go on the website and you will find the score for each country, and then you can have information about the pillars, the dimensions, and also the pillars and the dimensions for now. I will share in the chat just after the presentation the link to the platform, because this one is our proof of concept. It was not launched yet. So I think this is it, because if I don't have time, I can skip all those. Yeah. So this information finally will be presented on the Internet Society Pulse website, which has different categories of information, one on shutdown, one on enabling technologies, and ours will be, the thing that I presented today will be on the resilience. So please visit the pulse.internetsociety.org website, and you can navigate to resilience to find information about the index and the score of your own country. Thank you for your attention.
Very much, Amrish, for that presentation. Is there any question we don't see? But please pass in the chat, okay, the different links you share there, so that participant or delegate can access to the information. Thank you very much, Amrish. We would go to the next presentation. We invite Mr. Barak Otieno to tell us about why African CCTLD should consider the African DNS support program. So Mr. Barak Otieno is the General Manager of Africa TLD. So you have the floor now. So we count on you, okay, to give your presentation within 20 minutes. You have the floor now. Yeah, Barak.
Thank you very much, Arthur, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues, from wherever you are joining this presentation or call from. I'll try to be very brief, and I'm glad that I'm coming after Amrish, who has sort of just set the tone for what I would have loved, or what I want to talk about. So just a quick introduction for those that may not know AFTLD. I'm assuming everybody knows AFTLD. We are the regional association for country code top level domain registries in Africa, representing the CCTLDs. And I will skip the rest of the introductory slides and just go straight to the point. AFTLD has been working on CCTLD Observatory for a couple of years now, and I must say that this is not the first time this work is happening, having been occasioned by a study that was conducted by ICANN, the Africa DNS Market Study, around the year 2015. Let me actually just refer to the study. Around the year 2015-2016. So the conversation about having an observatory had started way back in the year 2013 at the onset of what is referred to as the Africa Domain Name System Forum, which I know that most of you have been able to participate. So sometime early this year, AFTL reached out to AFRINIC, and I'll explain why. And of course, with the support of ISOC and ICANN, to see how we can be able to build on the African CCTLD Observatory. The reason we are pushing or working hard to make sure that the observatory is in place is because as we have been pushing conversations in the Africa Domain Name System Forum, there are more investors or people who are interested in investing in the DNS space, in the CCTLD and TLD space in Africa. But for them to invest, they need information. For them to invest, they need data. And as probably Amresh has commented as he was introducing his presentation, getting information on the DNS space in Africa has been quite a challenge over a period of time. In fact, I would say that AFTLD has tirelessly worked over the last 8 years to make sure that African CCTLDs are automated. And as we speak, more than 95% of CCTLDs in Africa are now automated, thanks to support from the community and from the stakeholders that I've mentioned earlier. And right now, beyond automation, we are looking at turning this automation into business opportunities that benefit the people of our continent. And so statistics are now important. So the observatory is going to leverage on some of the initiatives that have already been done on the African continent. Specifically, I want to speak about the Africa DNS Support Program, which is an initiative that was started by AFRINIC to make sure that African CCTLDs get free Anycast services from AFRINIC. Even with this opportunity, it has come to our attention that not every African CCTLD is actually taking advantage of this opportunity. And as we develop the observatory in partnership with the partners that I've listed, AFTLD has also noted that we can take advantage of this Anycast data to make sure that we are able to provide on-demand information or on-demand data on statistics from the various CCTLDs in Africa. So this is the reason why we have seen it fit, led by the executive committee at AFTLD, to reach out to every African CCTLD and encourage them to be part and parcel of the Africa DNS Support Program. Just looking at some of the statistics, I noted that out of about 57 CCTLDs associated with countries and territories in Africa, only 29 are part of this DNS support program. And for starters, we at AFTLD have written to each and every CTLD within the African continent, or any territory. By that I mean the islands within the African continent, to encourage them to be part and parcel of this Africa DNS support program. And we believe that through the MOU and partnership that we have with AFRINIC, and after seeking permission from these respective CCTLDs, we shall be able to obtain some of this data and then use it to populate the observatory, which in return is going to be of benefit to the African community. So speaking about the African CCTLD Observatory, our goal is to ensure that, again, I've mentioned this, our goal is to ensure that all African CCTLDs are part of this program, and our secondary goal is to ensure that African CCTLDs can share Anycast data through an automated platform, which we are already building. So for those who are online, we have a beta platform that is sitting on stats.aftld.org. Basically, that platform has been developed based on desk research or desk survey, and we noted that at times we are overtaken by events, which makes the data to be out of date. And this is the reason why we are pushing for automation of this data, and we are confident that this Anycast platform is going to be of benefit to us. We are currently transitioning from the beta platform to Laravel, which will enable us to add some more backend functionalities, so that then for individuals and institutions that are interested in accessing this data, we can look at how to provide mechanisms for the community to be able to access this data, especially for those that want to make decisions based on the particular data that will be hosted on the DNS platform. So, and with that, I think I want to bring my presentation to a close and save a few minutes. In case there are any questions, I'm happy to take them. Back to you, Arthur.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Barak, for that insightful presentation. We will move now to Mr. Fagani Taboyuk, who is the head of connectivities policy at Meta, for his presentation. So, dear Fagani, you have now the floor.
Yes, thank you, Arthur. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. Arthur, are my slides going to be projected?
Yes. Yes, it's coming.
Great. Great. Thank you so much. So yes, reintroducing myself, I'm called Fagani Tambayuk. I'm the head of connectivity policy for Africa at Meta, formerly known as Facebook. And it's a real privilege and honor and pleasure as well for us to be here with you today presenting. And my presentation would really focus on what we need to do as an ecosystem or as a community to ensure that all Africans have access to high-speed connectivity. So if we move, how am I able? Okay, yes. So quickly going through the agenda, I'll talk about the current state of connectivity in Africa, and I'll also underline why high-speed connectivity is an imperative for the continent, and what we have to do as a community, as various stakeholders, to ensure that all Africans have access to this high-quality connectivity, and also underline the need for not just infrastructure, but initiatives around readiness and relevance. So the name has changed from Facebook to Meta, but our mission hasn't changed. We still want to give people the power to build community and bring the world closer. And connectivity is really at the heart of our mission. We're not able to give people the power to build community. We're not able to bring the world closer if almost 3 billion people are still not connected to high-speed connectivity. And that number or those figures are quite acute in Africa, where we still have a large number of Africans still not using the internet or still not benefiting from the internet. And I think it's clear for everyone. We currently having this meeting remotely. Since COVID-19, the internet has really come at the forefront of all conversations. It's become it's clear that it's a crucial tool for improving livelihoods. And if you look at latest figures from the Inclusive Internet Index, you would see that a lot of the people across the world really depend on the internet for their livelihoods. But what is the current state of connectivity in Africa? If you look again at the data, whether it's from the ITU, the GSMA, or different other people that are tracking this data, you would see that we're lagging as a continent. If you look at just 4G connectivity, network coverage, that row that is highlighted in yellow, you'll see that while North America or Europe is almost fully covered by 4G, we're not even up to 50% as a continent when it comes to coverage of 4G. We still don't have 4G everywhere. We still don't have access to high-speed connectivity as a continent. So to me, I think it's clear that as even though we've achieved a lot of progress, especially when you look at coverage from 2G or from a 3G perspective. We still have a long way to go, especially when we look at the sort of metrics when it comes to really tracking the prevalence or the use of high-speed connectivity. If we move to the next slide and we think about 5G, which is really the latest type of high-speed connectivity that we see being deployed across the world. If we look at forecasts from Ericsson, by 2026, so 5 years from now, the picture in Africa is very dismal, very, very, very terrible. You'll see that in Africa, we're just going to have 7% 5G subscriptions as compared to North America, where we're talking about 84%. So really, when we look at all the other regions, Africa is still lagging. Africa would continue to lag when it comes to high-speed connectivity. And as a continent, as stakeholders that are really determined to ensure that all Africans have access to this high-speed connectivity, I think it's a reason for concern. And that is why it's important that we have this conversation. What should we be doing to ensure that as a continent we don't continue to lag behind? We have a situation where we really benefit from this high-speed connectivity. And really, it's not just about high-speed connectivity. Even from a developmental perspective, the African Development Bank's high 5 priority areas for transforming the continent are really dependent on high-speed connectivity. Whether it's power, electrification, agriculture, industrialization, or even integrating bringing the continent closer, or improving the lives of all Africans. All of these focus areas are dependent on high-speed connectivity. And that's why it's important that as we're talking about high-speed connectivity, we should also remember the stakes at hand. Why is it so important for all Africans, for everybody on the continent to have high-speed connectivity? It's because without this high-speed connectivity, we can't transform the continent. We can't really get the continent to that next level of its development. We can't improve the economic lives, the social lives of all Africans on the continent. That's why it's really important. If we move to the next slide. So we've made some progress over the years. We're now in a situation where 2G is almost everywhere. 3G has high penetration levels across the continent, and 4G is growing. But when we look at the trends, when we look at the current situation, we still as a continent, we're not catching up. We continue to lag behind the other regions. So what can we do? What should we be doing? And for us as a company, we think we need to innovate. We need to innovate across policy and regulation. We need to innovate across the business models that underpin rollout of broadband infrastructure. We also need to innovate. We need to change the way we roll out networks from traditional methods to more open disaggregated networks. And these are some of the things or areas that where, as a company, we're really pushing for more innovation. We're pushing for innovation on spectrum policy. We need more unlicensed spectrum. We need government, we need policymakers to start thinking of ways that they can bring down the cost of network infrastructure or smart devices. So custom waivers, tax rebates. What about telecom regulatory sandboxes to enable entrepreneurs and innovators to try new things when it comes to connecting people to the internet? Business model innovation, network as a service, co-investing to deploy shared infrastructure, satellite Wi-Fi. These are some of the things that as a continent we need to explore, because if we keep doing what we've been doing in the past, we'll continue to lag the rest of the world when it comes to connectivity. Technology innovation, things like Open RAN, the telecom infra project. These are some of the things that as a continent we need to embrace, we need to adopt to ensure that all Africans really benefit from that high-speed connectivity. So over the next few slides, we'll give you some examples of what Meta has been doing in this space. I think generally we've been advocating for more unlicensed spectrum. We understand that, yes, licensed spectrum is key to really ensuring the rollout of these mobile networks, but we also need to make sure that there's sufficient unlicensed spectrum. So 60 gigahertz, for instance, 6 gigahertz. What are we doing with these spectrum bands? Because it's only through a combination of licensed and unlicensed spectrum will we be able to deploy the sort of networks that will really catch us up to the rest of the world. If we move to the next slide. To Africa is another of those projects where we're innovating. We've partnered with 7 other operators, a lot of them Pan-African operators like the MTNs and the Orange, to deploy shared infrastructure, shared fiber, international subsea fiber infrastructure. And To Africa is the latest of this innovative business model where it's now the largest subsea cable project in the world, with 45,000 kilometers connecting 32 countries across Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. We're talking about network as a service. And again, this speaks to connecting rural people living in rural areas. Currently, traditional business models are not working. So what have we done? What we did in Peru, and it is the sort of innovation, business model innovation that we might want to consider replicating on the continent. We partnered with Telefonica and some banks to really set up this wholesale mobile rural network called IPT, or Internet para Todos. And through this wholesale network, we've been able to deploy 4G to rural Peru. So 6.8 million people are currently living in rural Peru. They've never had access to high-speed connectivity. And in the space of 2 years, we've been able to connect over 2 million of these people to high-speed 4G. And we're talking about the most rural areas in Peru. And by leveraging this sort of network as a service, a wholesale a mobile network that multiple service providers can leverage and provide connectivity to people in rural areas, we're able to connect these people to high-speed connectivity. And these are some of the business model innovation that we would have to replicate in Africa to ensure that all Africans, especially those in rural areas, have access to high-speed connectivity. The TIP Connect community, so Telecom Infra Project community, consists of a whole range of companies across the world, including some in Africa, who are working together to come up with new ways of building networks, of rolling out networks to ensure that everyone has access to high-speed connectivity. We have African companies here like the MTNs, the BRICS, the Vodafone, the Oranges, and these are people that are really coming together, working on that African context and coming up with solutions that work for Africa. Open RAN, it's one of those new ways of rolling out networks where we're talking about moving from a single vendor, fully integrated RAN to a multi-vendor, disaggregated interoperable RAN. And it's only with such innovation, such technological innovations, where we're able to democratize the supply chain, we're able to accelerate innovation and improve network economics. It's only by doing such things, by making open RAN deployments on the continent or such new ways of rolling out networks, that will be able to connect all Africans to high-speed connectivity. But as a continent, we also need to focus on relevance and readiness. I think generally what we're seeing is, even in areas or in geographies who have access to high-speed connectivity like the 4G network, we still have situations where Africans there are still not using the internet fully to improve their lives. And this is as a result of challenges around relevance, readiness, and Meta is actually partnering with a lot of stakeholders across the continent to roll out programs that build the skills of Africans and enable them to really fully leverage this high-speed connectivity to improve their day-to-day lives, to improve their livelihoods. And it's important that we continue to do this. It's important that we innovate on the policy and regulatory front. It's important that we innovate on the business model front. It's important that we innovate the way we roll out networks. But it's equally important that we continue to address challenges around relevance, around readiness, things around devices, all of these challenges that, if not addressed in a holistic manner, we would still continue to lag the rest of the world, and we wouldn't be able to fully benefit from high-speed internet like the rest of the world is benefiting. So I'll stop there. I hope you found that presentation useful. And again, the key message is that we need to change what we've been doing. We need to come up with new ways to ensure that all Africans really benefit from the high-speed connectivity that and transform their lives. So I'll stop there, Otto, and back to you.
Thank you very much, Fagani, for that presentation on the project being carried out by Meta. So, dear participant, we reached the question answer part. So, if you have any question for Mr. Fagani, please go ahead. Okay, there is a question for you from Mr. Kisan Fukira. The Open RAN is a very interesting concept that would surely help to make network more cost effective and reduce complexity on RAN due to multi-vendors. Where can we follow the development on this? The question
that's an excellent question. And I think what we could do is I could share some details with my colleagues that will lead our work on telecom on the TIP side, the telecom infra project. And my colleagues have been working with operators across Africa to trial out some of these innovative solutions like Open RAN, and they'll be able to provide you with some more details. So I think what I'll do is I'll share my contact details with the gentleman. I'll put my email in the chat box, and then if they could reach out to me, and I'll connect you with my colleagues that are leading that particular piece of work across the continent.
Thank you very much. Is there another question before we close that session? So, dear participant, for your information, the slide of the different presentation are or will be available on the meeting website. So we invite you to consult our meeting website to get all that material. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you very much, Mr. Fagani, for your time dedicated for that meeting. So I'll give the floor back to Magali. Thank you very much.
Merci, Monsieur Arthur. Nous tenons à remercier tous nos intervenants. Et aussi...
Thank you. We would like to thank all our speakers.
Magali, please go ahead.
We would like to thank all our sponsors, which helped us in organizing AFRINIC-34, Africa for the technical part, Meta Kimaru for ISP, DNS Africa. So a big thank to all our sponsors. Thanks to all the participants who already filled in our survey. You can still fill in the questionnaire. And if you are interested in the IPv6 certification, you can enroll yourself in order to take advantage of a 50% discount with the reference AFRINIC-34. We are sorry because we are a little bit behind schedule. We would like to thank all our speakers and panelists for their time, for their participation in the round table, and even the technical presentation. So thanks to our experts as well, and thank you for participating until the very end of this meeting. Starting from tomorrow 9 a.m. we will have the meeting, PPM meeting, which is going to be very interesting and fruitful. So now, from now, if you want, you can leave the room. Thank you.